This is the Marvel Masterworks Vidcast, True Believers, where we cover all of the adventures in the Marvel Universe. From the wanderings of the Green Goliath, to the chaotic offices of the Daily Bugle, to the grim alleyways of Hell's Kitchen, and to the top of Avengers Tower, with your hosts, Adam and the Emerald Enthusiast.
Welcome to another episode of the Marvel Masterworks Vidcast. As always, and podcast, I should say, because you can hear it as well. As always, I'm your host, Adam. With me is my co-host who is doing some research, the Emerald Enthusiast, Donnie. Donnie, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, comic book fans? It's the man whose ring runs on fanboy energy, and we're back to sling a few webs and talk about No Way Home.
And we have a returning special guest, Donnie. I'm going to let you do another one of your introductions. See if you can top yourself. Have fun trying.
It's going to be shorter. I'm not going to, because we got a lot to talk about today. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and beings of the Omniverse, please welcome back from Italians for Spidey. This is Nikko Caruso.
You never fail to deliver with that energy, Donnie. It's so contagious. I'm more jazzed than I already was. So honored to be back here talking to you guys. Always a beautiful time, but even more so than that, we're talking this beauty. It's a beautiful thing we're going to talk about today. So I can't wait.
Indeed it is. Donnie, you know what after hearing so many of your introductions, when I do the full countdown of the Multiverse Wives list on the show, I'm going to have you do like an introduction for each one of them.
Okay.
That's going to be a lot of introductions.
Okay.
Can you do that live so we could all just watch it at the same time?
Live stream, yeah, that's it. You know, that'll be funny. But yeah, we are going to finally review Spider-Man No Way Home. It's been look, I'll do the spoiler warning, but
yeah, come on.
It was December. The thing's made $2 billion. I think it's around there, $2 billion.
And the spoilers are used in the marketing for it, especially with the home video release. So I think
at this point, if you haven't watched it, I don't know where you've been the last few months.
I'm not sure.
You know what planet you've been on, but welcome back. We're going to spoil Spider-Man for you. But before that, Marvel / Disney has announced, or it's been revealed via Variety and Deadline and actual legitimate sources, not geekosity and BS like that, that Daredevil is getting a Disney Plus series. Daredevil being, I assume, unless something changed in the halls of Marvel Studios, Daredevil being Charlie Cox. And I would be surprised if Vincent D'Onofrio doesn't show up as well, because this is not a spoiler because we reviewed Hawkeye, that Kingpin was present. And as I said to Donnie when we discussed the ending, there's no way the Kingpin is dead, because that would just be stupid. So I'm assuming those two principles are back. As for everybody else, I have no idea. All we know is that there are a couple of writers attached. Nico, do you have the name of the writers?
It's Chris Ord and Matt Corman, who are known for Hit, because I actually think it was a hit ABC show, I think, called Covert Affairs. It was a drama. It has a 93% of Rotten Tomatoes, which I did not know. It went for 5 seasons, but even more so than that, they are known for writing the iconic 2006 Christmas film Deck the Halls, starring Danny DeVito and Matthew Broderick.
Now, a lot of people were taking issue with that because apparently people don't like that movie.
Let's see. Deck the Halls. I know Rotten Tomatoes is not the overseer of everything, but it is sitting at a whopping 6% from critics and a 30% with over 50,000 reviews from the audience. So,
okay, look, all I'll say to the people freaking out, whether you like that movie or not, or whatever your feelings are on it, every writer, or in this case, writers in the history of Hollywood has a pile of crap on their resume.
Sure.
Like Akiva Goldsman, who's doing wonders with the Star Trek universe on Paramount Plus, like Strange New Worlds. I mean, that's Star Trek chef kiss territory. But Akiva Goldsman is Oscar winner, A Beautiful Mind, right? The guy also wrote Batman and Robin. So, I mean, everybody has had it done.
And sometimes a job is a job. Like,
Yeah.
and just because something isn't that great or in the realm doesn't mean they're not going to translate. Like, look
Right.
at the Russo brothers went from Yumi and Dupree
Yeah.
to 4 of the biggest movies of all time in the
Yeah.
MCU. So
I wouldn't panic. I
And
would call.
there's nothing wrong with a bad Christmas movie, by the way.
Yeah.
that's
You
true.
watch a marathon, if you can find one dud in there, you're going to eventually find a trashy gem. That's just my advice.
The only thing I will caution people now, because I know how fans are, because I'm one of them. Don't expect this to be copy paste Netflix Daredevil.
No.
We're not going to get the level of violence like blood, R-rated that we got on Netflix on Disney Plus. So prepare accordingly. But then again, let me caution and say, last time I read a Daredevil comic, which was last month, so it hasn't been that long. It said 13 plus on it, basically PG-13. So Daredevil, while he can be R-rated in certain instances, depending on which writer or which streaming service he's on, is not beholden to an R rating. It can be done with a PG-13. So my caution would be keep that in mind. And by and large, I have issues with certain Marvel MCU properties, Thor Ragnarok and how they butchered the Hulk. I could go on, but, Ant-Man is not the cream of the crop. I enjoy it, but it's not the cream of the crop. But,
Cream of the crop.
But 9 times, I had to set you up for a wrestling reference. But 9 times out of 10, if I go watch a Marvel Cinematic Universe product, I'm going to enjoy it. Now, I myself may be more critical of this because the last time Nikko was on, we talked about how much Daredevil means to me personally. So I may be slightly more attentive and critical, but I'm also not going to go there. All right, Feige, you better give me basically season 4. Like, I get that that's not what this is because they're saying the way they're describing it is a continuation, but something new. The continuation, see that descriptor right there to me. Now, again, I could be totally wrong. It's happened before, but the continuation part of it to me says Charlie Cox, Vincent D'Onofrio. Where's my pen? Hold on.
Here we go.
Deborah Ann Wall on the list. Hopefully she's there. What's her name? Elodie Young. What's her name? Elodie Young, the girl that played Electra.
Yeah.
Also on the list. Get her back, Feige. That's what you need. But so the continuation part of it, that's what I expect.
Yeah.
Notice when spoilers for something that's been out since December, and we're going to talk about it more in depth. When Charlie Cox showed up in Spider-Man No Way Home, it was Matt Murdock, and there was zero reference to other than we'll talk about what the reference was, but very minor. But there was no reference to Kingpin, to his adventures as Daredevil. So they're already kind of giving you a semi-fresh slate. This is essentially what I look at it is in your head. Think of it as Batman Forever, whereas it's sort of a soft reboot of the
soft
Daredevil.
reboot is a good word.
That's how I would. So that's my caution to fans because I know how we are. If we love something like the Daredevil series, we want just give me that again. So but don't expect that is what I'm saying because you're probably if you're going in expecting Marvel's gonna do MCU's gonna do rated R. I can't wait. Did you watch Moon Knight? That was not rated R.
Right.
So.
Well, and let me just interject, and I don't want to do spoilers because it just dropped. There was some violence on Kenobi that they did. They did it in such a way that I don't think people will be disappointed. The things that they did, it wasn't R-rated.
Yeah.
But there were some things on there that you would expect for like this era of the Star Wars saga. Yeah. If they do things like that on the Daredevil series, you won't be disappointed.
Yeah, there's ways to do PG-13 and not have to be as gory as some of the stuff that we saw in Daredevil. So like look at the Dark Knight, the pencil in the eye trick. I didn't see the guy's eye get destroyed, but the implication of that's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
That's enough. Like if you're smart about it, there's ways to disturb me without making me want to vomit while I'm watching something. So so just my caution to Daredevil Netflix fans is be excited, but don't expect the exact same thing. That kind of stuff doesn't. You can't expect a new again. You're getting new writers, so there's going to be a new. Feige has full control now. There's going to be a different flavor. It just is, and so the sooner you accept that and be ready for it. Like I don't want to see hashtags, bring back Stephen S. DeKnight or any of that nonsense because the guy doesn't want to be part of it. Like he's publicly said he won't work with Marvel again, so leave him alone. But I know there's going to be a segment of the Daredevil fandom that's going to hashtag that because everybody hashtags everything on so I mean we've got a Nikko hashtag. Peter, one of our guests, has a
Nikko
every time
stuff.
something related to Kristen Stewart is in the news, he hashtags Nikko stuff.
Which can I comment on that real quick? Because not enough people know this. Not enough people know this, and it might be shocking. I was never a Kristen Stewart fan, so I'm big into. I consider myself a cinephile. I'm very into outside of all of this stuff. I love movies. I love talking about them, so I'm very much into Oscar season and the film festivals and everything. Was not a big Kristen fan until I saw her performance in Spencer and thought it was the best performance of the year. Really wanted her to get an Oscar nomination. She got it, but it's funny how it turned into this I'm a Kristen Stewart super fan, which I'm not, but I think I am now because I think all the support has made me become one.
Okay.
And she's got a film coming out Thursday. I'm very excited for it called Crimes of the Future.
Are you gonna start the hashtag to get her in the Batman 2 as Poison Ivy? Because
someone had a different idea, having her be like a younger Dr. Leslie Tompkins. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool to have her get to talk to Pattinson. I don't know. That would be.
Well, I mean, we've already had a hot Leslie Tompkins in Gotham, so you want to bring on another one? Listen,
double down.
Gave me stripper at May, so why not?
Why not?
Settle down, buddy.
Well, they did. Marisa Tomei. It's not my fault.
Not go that far.
It's not my fault. Marisa Tomei she plays in The Wrestler. She was, I saw her front area, and it's like, and it's funny because it's like when I was watching Spider-Man, I'm like, as I'm watching, I'm doing that, and I'm like, I need to go take a shower because I just realized that I've seen Aunt May's, chest before.
Lady
exposed.
bits.
Yeah, which was not something that I knew that I was ever going to see when I was watching the original, or nor did I wanted to when I was watching the original Spider-Man in 2002. I'll tell you that right now. So,
adaptations.
Life takes some interesting turns, my friends. Things I'd never thought I'd see. And then, Watchmen, I saw Big Blue.
Hey, it's going to play well.
Let's not go there.
At the beginning of the show, it's going to hook people.
Don't show. My caution to everybody is don't show up late to a screening of Watchmen, an IMAX screening, and have to sit in the front row. And you know how that movie starts. You know what you're greeting with, blue and everything. So I made that mistake, and I'm still having trauma over it. But this is not a Watchmen podcast. I don't know if we're going to do one of those.
This is incredible.
And by the way, I just want to say I hope that the actual movie is pixelated because I saw the trailer for Thor: Love and Thunder this week. Okay, now my wife had a much different reaction to Chris Hemsworth in that one scene.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
People always ask me about that, and I'm like, look, I grew up with these heroes as paternal figures.
Yeah.
DC and Marvel. Okay, so why don't I want to see them like that? Because they're paternal figures. So you figure that out now.
I get you. No, I get you.
I'm sure your wife would disagree and want to see Thor in full glory, I would assume.
Just all I'm saying is tell me, don't show me, please.
Right.
Don't show me the Thor movie, but if you want to show me Natalie Portman, in any other way, by all means, just don't do it in the Thor movie because it's PG-13. But shout out to Natalie Portman. I'm glad she's getting a second chance at that franchise and a better role because she was underserved, and I think she got a lot of crap for the Star Wars prequels that she didn't deserve.
Correct.
And she took her preparation for this movie seriously, obviously.
Yeah.
She's gotten big.
She looks jacked.
Yeah.
And she could
yes.
probably suplex me, and I would probably be okay with that. But that's neither here nor there. Speaking of suplexing, before we get into the movie, we also got the teaser trailer, I guess, for She-Hulk.
Yes.
So just quick comments from all of us on what we thought. I'll start us off. I liked the tone of it all. The way it seemed, what kind of a show we're kind of getting. I like Tatiana Maslany seemingly in the role. She was great in Orphan Black. So in terms of performance, I have zero concern on that front. And look, everybody knows that I am very concerned with the portrayal of the Hulk in recent Marvel iterations. He seems a little bit better here in terms of more playing the smart angle and not I'm a big goof angle. Like there is, like, Smart Hulk is actually exhibiting intelligence in this, whereas
He's not dabbing.
or oh, you want a selfie? So just keep him smart. Let him get angry a couple of times, and I'm happy. So far, fingers crossed. I'm good with what they've shown me of him. Cool to see Abomination back, where we saw a bit of him. He looks very much like he did in Shang-Chi. So they're keeping that look, which is more comic accurate. So cool from my perspective. I know there's a lot of concern with the visual effects on She-Hulk herself. I'm kind of more like, I get there are some shots that don't look right, but I'm also kind of keeping calm because there are some shots that look really good, and I understand that they work on these things until the 11th hour.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well said.
I mean, a lot of directors, when you hear them talk about visual effects, they're like, "Well, we were working on it last night," and they're at the premiere. So just to give you an idea of how often they tweak this stuff. So I'm not going to get concerned in that respect yet. But when I see the thing, if it looks wonky, I'll say it looks wonky. But as of right now, I get there are some shots that look a little weird, but I have some level of faith that they will be improved upon before August?
Yes.
I think August.
Okay. Nikko, what were some of your thoughts on the general trailer?
Yeah, you hit a lot of great points. So I actually really, really did enjoy the tone. I really dug it. I like what they're going for. It's this how I described it on one of my other shows, the Vigilante 1939. I really like the tone, and I like what they're going for with Jennifer. It's like this almost quirky, not a rom-com show, but it's like that
Ally
kind of,
McBeal kind of
and
ish.
not like coming of age either, but like kind of finding yourself and dealing with what you got going on.
Yeah.
And one thing I like about it, and I don't want to get back into the idea of sex and everything, but I like how the MCU has, I think, really, and if you want to end up cutting this out, that's fine. If it doesn't sound good, what I'm going to say is like, the MCU notoriously is very one way with how they present that stuff. It's very, hetero pushed.
Yeah.
And I kind of really liked seeing them give some credit and validation to other ways of attraction, how she's, a really fit, larger woman, and there's a lot of guys who like her. And at the end, when she's picking up the guy at the end, like, not only is it funny, I'm like, oh, it's kind of cool. You're kind of pushing and you're promoting different things that people are interested in.
A stronger woman. It's like,
which I thought was really cool. Then you go back to the Thor trailer and it's all about Hemsworth again. So I guess we'll take our wins where we can.
But they are presenting Natalie Portman in a strong light, so I'll give them that. Whereas
exactly. But on top of that, it looks cool. It looks fun. I'm gonna save my thoughts on the Hulk because I'm just gonna wait till I see it because I'm not a fan of how he's kind of progressed in the MCU. The reason why I'm someone who is a little bit more, I guess, concerned about the CGI is because I think you could get away. There's still a lot of time to finish it and everything. Like you said, those are very valid points. For me, though, it's just interesting because when your main character, I think you can get away with, risky CGI and
Sure.
in spurts, but when she's going to be like the main character and the main focus, it's going to be in your face for the whole time. And in parts of the trailer, it was a little distracting because of how
So you're saying make sure the shots are finished before you present the trailer.
a little bit.
Okay.
I'm also wondering though, and I've seen people disagree with this, and that's totally fine. But for me, I go, so the thing about She-Hulk is she doesn't physically transform as much, like her whole appearance. Like the Hulk gets really massive and really large. She-Hulk grows, but she still looks more, I would say, human than the Hulk, just from my knowledge of seeing her in the comics. So I look at what they do with Gamora, and those practical effects really work. But then they're like, well, they would have had to make her larger in a way. Well, you could put on a suit that looks like green muscles. You could practice her face up a little bit, and then you could have shots where she's standing on something so she looks taller. So there's a lot of practical movie magic that would have to go into it, and use your CG shots for far away and action stuff. So I'm just curious why they didn't go that route.
Why they chose more to go all CG?
Yeah. So I don't know the answer to that. Do I think it's a wrong choice? No, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, interesting.
Sometimes the practical really works, and I think they really could have sold it because Maslany is so talented.
Yeah.
Sometimes the CG characters, the performance really shines through. I look at like Josh Brolin as Thanos.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't as much. So I think she's really talented. Too talented to be buried the way it looks like she's buried under everything. So we'll see.
Yeah. Interesting points. Interesting. Donnie, what's your take?
Oh,
you're a big Hulk fan, so go.
Yeah, I think the tone fits especially for what I read with She-Hulk back in the 80s. She was breaking the fourth wall and being very humor centric with that comic long before Deadpool, actually. Mm-hmm. And I think that the tone is right. Yes, the CGI looks a little unfinished, but I believe it was Jamal Igle that I saw, the artist, who pointed this out on Facebook a couple of days ago. They still have plenty of time to finish, make it look, sleek and done. Mm-hmm. So I'm not worried at this point until I start to see things actually in the series. Yeah. I'm going to say, okay, that's going to be taken care of. I'm going to be optimistic, hopefully. So, yeah. Now with the Hulk, again, I'll try to be brief here. Hopefully they do some fixing, and if they can't, within a few episodes, give us a better Professor Hulk, just move on to the Green Scar or the Immortal Hulk or something like that. Let's go with another iteration, or even Joe Fixit, even though Joe came before the Professor Hulk. Let's do something else, because I don't like this kind of, calm Zen Hulk. I just don't think it works. So,
amen.
I'm not going to argue with you there.
I can't.
I was telling Nikko off air, some of the stuff in Ragnarok and the last two Avengers movies had me longing for Lou Ferrigno in green paint, and so it is what it is. But all right. So that takes care of the news portion. We're going to take a quick break, and on the other side, we're going to talk Spider-Man: No Way Home. So stay tuned.
Get your popcorn ready.
I'm your host, Adam.
And I'm the Emerald Enthusiast.
And for all your multiverse viewing and listening needs, check out our shows.
That includes Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Masters of the Universe, the Marvel Universe, and the DC Comics Universe, including the Emerald Echo Podcast.
All right here on YouTube and Podbean. From the first podcast and vidcast to the last.
And we're back!
Indeed we are, and as promised, we're finally going to review Spider-Man: No Way Home, a true global phenomenon. And the reason I say that is because, as I talked about box office-wise, I could be off, but I'm pretty sure this is either close to or has achieved the $2 billion
very close
threshold, correct?
Very
so
close.
I mean, they'll probably, who are we kidding? At some point, it'll get a re-release just to push it over the $2 billion mark. I'm almost certain of that. What I find interesting about that, considering that this movie is essentially a celebration of 2 decades of Spider-Man on film. If just going back to the first Spider-Man, the circumstances surrounding the release of that film were, unfortunately, it was coming off the heels of the tragedy of 9/11. And it was, I think, at a time where people really needed that positive, fun, hopeful movie. And it benefited from everybody wanting to go to the theater and get an escape. Come full circle to this movie, and we're in, I mean, the circumstance is different. We're in the still at that point in the throes of the pandemic. But the vaccine is more widely available at this point. Theaters are starting to open up. And I think people were just at the point where they just wanted to go have fun in a movie and just be wrapped up in the experience. And I think this movie was, not that the movie doesn't deserve everything it got, but it was benefited by that recipe of the desire of everybody to just get out and forget about what was going on around them. Like really enjoy the experience of going to the movies again. So it's just interesting to me that it came full circle in that way, and like that's the same sentiment that we were kind of experienced when the first movie came out, and now to have that again is fairly interesting. So I think that contributed to it. Like I think a big part of the success of this movie and why it did so well is because it literally had, again, December, so don't throw me any stones at me. It had the other two Spider-Man, and it had some of the villains from both franchises, and I think that propelled the box office even further. Whereas if you just release another Spider-Man movie that just has Doctor Strange helping out, and that's pretty much it, I don't think it makes anywhere near the kind of cash that this one made. So, like, it had a lot of circumstances that were just right for it. And so, but again, the movie, at the end of the day, you can put all those circumstances, in the basket. If the movie doesn't live up to that or deliver on what it promises, then I don't care what it has, it's not going to make that kind of cash. So all those things come into play. But I think it's a cool full circle kind of scenario for this movie. What are you guys' thoughts on that, Nikko?
I love that you brought that up. It's both the first one and the most recent one have come at times when the world needs something. Yeah. And I do think not only was the first one coming off of 9/11, but it was this showing the world a hero. Mm-hmm. And that sometimes people clown the song, but I love it. The Chad Kroger that song "Hero." I mean, it worked. It's so fit for the time and the movie. And then this one, Adam, you teed it up perfectly. Is people were finally ready to start trying to get back out there, and the movie itself is all about helping people and second chances, and with all the nostalgia and everything, and just the character work for Spider-Man, there's something for everyone in the movie, in my humble opinion, and you walk out of it feeling so good that it was perfect timing. It was unfortunate perfect timing, though, that our world had to experience something like it did. But man, Spider-Man, now you're right, at 2 points in history has really come at a time when people need a hero.
Donnie?
Well, I'll get more into this at the end because I don't want to give away too much of my opinion on the movie, but I will say, for something to make this kind of money and to have this kind of impact, it's got to be more than just good acting, just good visuals, just good score, all that kind of stuff. It has to be conceptually something that is bigger than what we've seen before, something innovative. And this brought us something that we had never seen before in superhero cinema. And we're going to get into this, but what we saw was really so much of honoring the mythos and bringing so much service to the fans, whether you were an old fan, a new fan, a comic fan. This kind of hit every beat that it possibly could. And it was so wonderful to see. And When I get to my rating, obviously, I'm guessing that you can hear the enthusiasm in my voice.
Yeah, I think
love this
all three
experience.
of our ratings are going to be in the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, in terms of the movie itself, I love the fact that it opens right where we left off,
Mm-hmm.
and it shows that we see that manipulated footage that Mysterio had sent into the Daily Bugle and then was broadcast all over the place, and we see people crowding around, and everybody's finding out that Spider-Man's Peter Parker, and the first thing they do is bombard his girlfriend, asking him questions, and he swings to her rescue, and they kind of try and find some common ground. I love that whole sequence where they go. I think it was the sewer? Where did they? Yeah, the sewer, right? They were swinging in the, and so that whole sequence was cool. And it's funny because this film is dealing with multiverses. I imagine myself, if somehow all my multiverse wives converged in one place and found me and I was in trouble, I would be in the scenario of Zendaya just being swarmed and bombarded. But so I thought of that when I was watching the movie. But imagine what that would be like. But but the idea of there's consequences to people knowing a superhero's secret identity. It's why the secret identity, I love that this movie kind of reaffirms the importance of the secret identity because whether it be the last franchise of Spider-Man taking off his mask every 5 seconds, take a pick, they both did it, so you can't just single out Toby. They were always taking off the mask.
Thank you.
Or
glad I wasn't the only person who got perturbed by that.
Or no. I think most Spider-Man fans would agree with that sentiment. And then in the MCU proper, everybody knows that Steve Rogers is Captain America. Tony Stark friggin' says, "Hey, I'm Iron Man. Screw it," So Thor is just Thor. There is no, Donald Blake was a joke. It wasn't an actual secret identity in this franchise. So there's no real, I think, secret identity at this point. That's prominent in the MCU. But to have Spider-Man be the one, Spider-Man's movie be the one, place the importance of the general population cannot know who Spider-Man is because this is the result. I think is key. So I really like that setup. And again, what's even more important was hear the consequences from the last film. They just didn't forget it and say, "Hey, you guys want multiverse? Here's the first 5 minutes. Here's both Spider-Man. Here's everybody." They actually dealt with spillover from the last movie. So it wasn't just fan service. There was legitimate story and consequence, and I like that. So, other guys want to chime in on that?
No, I just let me say, I like the pacing, the way that they did the reveals of first the villains and eventually, the other two versions of Spider-Man. They did it in a way that was natural. It felt very organic. It didn't feel like, oh, let's slam everybody into, the highest gear possible and, let this be, hit the ground running right away with every character possible. And so that it's chaotic. They didn't do that. This was a very cohesive story. So what do you think, Nico?
Well said. And I couldn't agree more. I think, and what's funny is there were some criticisms to the story when it came out, which are fine. That's totally valid. But for me, like Donnie said, not only is the pacing great, but the concept too is to also touch back on what Adam said is it's taking the idea of where Far From Home left off. And it's making this really personal story about consequences and choice and sacrifice, right? And it's so naturally sprinkled throughout the entire film. We open up and people know who he is, and then he realizes, I have a card here. I can play this card with Doctor Strange. I know him. I can try to fix this and basically have what I want. And the beauty of Spider-Man and the beauty of most heroes is that they have to make sacrifices. They cannot have that perfect world. They can't have everything they want. So right off the bat, the story gives Peter Parker this choice. And so there's consequences of what happened in Far From Home. And then Peter tries to deal with it. He basically tries to take the easy way out. right?
Yeah.
Or the most desirable way out. And then more consequences ensue. And Peter Parker is always at his best when he has his Parker luck. Unfortunately, he can't have the ideal life he wants because he has both the blessing and the curse of being Spider-Man, to call back to the first Tobey film. And I think that makes for a really compelling story. Some might want to argue it's too fast. Some might want to argue it's too simple. It doesn't make sense. What I'll say is it's personal. And a lot of us watching that screen probably thought at one point, well, what if I could have undone some of these things in my life? What if
Absolutely
was able to do that, but I can't, but maybe we can't. And here I am, and every single thing has led me to where I am now. And in a way, it's beautiful with all the tribulations. It's still beautiful because we are who we are, right? And that is the foundation. That's the perfect foundation for a Spider-Man film. And it's something I don't believe the MCU, in my humble opinion, was able to achieve with Holland's character until this movie is giving him a story that was 100% personal and 100% tied to really the mythos of the character and what makes Peter Parker Peter Parker.
Yeah, I agree. And then, so that setup of, before we get to the Doctor Strange scenario, is, he is basically charged. He is performing vigilante activities, and that's illegal. As much as we like to dress, hey, they're all heroes. Yeah, but okay, but Spider-Man, Batman, the Punisher is a totally different ball of wax.
Different story.
Murderer, he's got murderer attached to his repertoire. But they're vigilantes, so that there is an element of this is not legal. What we're doing is not technically legal, and so he has to face initially the consequences of that, which brings the need for a lawyer, which brings in Matt Murdock. And I thought that was beautifully done. It was, again, very simple. There wasn't much hoopla. There wasn't excessive winking at the audience, like, you know who he is, right? You're like, you know who he is. It's like, yeah, we know. Everybody who watches this stuff knows who Daredevil is. And so the simple, it was Matt Murdock, as a lawyer. And the only kind of hint of sort of specialness from Matt Murdock that we get is when the brick comes through the window and he catches it.
He catches it, yeah.
And Peter's like, how did you do that? And he's like, I'm a good lawyer. I'm a really good lawyer.
Right. I know it wouldn't have made any sense at all, but right at that second, I wanted him to go, when he caught that brick and Peter was like, how'd you do that? I wanted him to go, I'm Daredevil.
I'm Daredevil.
That would have been funny. But and the thing that I enjoyed as a longtime fan of Daredevil and an unabashed fan of the Daredevil film, specifically the director's cut, hashtag make the Dareflex sequel. And I'm just kidding. But I enjoyed sitting at the table, Matt Murdock and Jon Favreau, who played Foggy in the Ben Affleck movie. So it was kind of like a multiversal version of Matt Murdock and Foggy. Yeah. And so I instantly thought of that. And then I started thinking of Jennifer Garner, who is also
okay.
Anyway, so
real quickly, one thing I don't want to gloss over because we're moving so quickly here. There's so much to talk about. I was really saddened by the fact that May broke up with Happy.
Yeah,
it sucks to be him.
He looked so despondent. It was so awful. Poor guy.
He's got some of that Parker luck, and
he was hitting some of that Parker luck. But real quick too, because I know we're going to talk about more things in sequence. But another thing this movie really does well. You brought up Aunt May. It's hard not to run with it. This is the best stuff they did with Tomei, and it's your best performance.
Absolutely.
Of the 4 appearances now. Yeah. It starts off with her breaking up with Happy, very comical, but then very, very soon she becomes actually the driving force of the movie and one of the biggest emotional pieces of the whole movie.
This is the first
I don't want to say this right now, but later on, I'm going to pay her a compliment that has something to do with a story point later on. So go ahead, Adam.
This for me is the first film where she feels like a parental figure for him, as opposed to, I'm one of your buddies. That's what she felt like at times, like more of a roommate, a friend kind of scenario, more than an aunt. It just felt that way. It just came out. This, she's like, nah, that's his parental figure. That's his aunt. And you see her take charge in wanting to protect him when he's at the police station. And she's like, don't say anything, like basically, shut up and let us take care of it, right? As any parent would, right?
Yeah. She wasn't scared of damage control at all either. She was like, mm-mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I agree with what Nikko and Donnie are saying. This was definitely Tomei's best performance in the role for sure, without question. And also it was good to see, in terms of the secret being out, that MJ stood by him. Like she didn't, she was very supportive. Like she wasn't concerned about what the repercussions for her. She just wanted to be there for him. And same with Ned. Was there too. And Flash Thompson is a goof. He's all. I look. That's the one thing about this franchise that I really don't. That casting choice is just it's horrendous. But anyway, he plays the goof that he always plays. It's pretty much status quo for him. He's probably the one character that doesn't really improve all that much. There's no movement whatsoever there in the brief scenes that he had.
I don't know if you agree with this or not, Nico, but if we ever see Anti-Venom, I hope it's not. Agent Venom. If we ever see Agent Venom, I hope it's not that version of Flash Thompson.
Oh, I'm with you. No,
Yeah.
I keep that far away from recast. Just keep it new. Sony, do what you need to do. Yeah, no.
I was hoping Green Goblin will throw him off a bridge. It didn't happen, but anyway, I got there. The only good thing he did was that his book was called Flashpoint, which was like, hey, the Flash is coming.
Right, exactly.
So that was good. And so I like that, but that was it. And then going forward a little bit to more of the consequences is that not only so they've kind of gotten out of their legal trouble, but they're getting rejected from their colleges because of Peter Parker being Spider-Man.
We see that Peter, MJ, and Ned, their MIT applications are rejected.
Yeah.
And that's what causes him to go to the Sanctum Sanctorum to ask for Doctor Strange's help.
Yeah.
So.
And that's where we are. So again, more this film, really keys in on consequences more than I think any of the other two Spider-Man films in this iteration did. So then we get to the Peter makes a decision. I'm going to go to Doctor Strange. You're going to have him try and fix this thing. And what's funny is, like, at first he's very formal with Doctor Strange. He's like, Mr. Strange, this and that. And he's like, no, we saved the world. You can call me Steven. And then he does, and he's like, okay, that feels weird. Go back to. And so, like, that's a little bit of humor that I like. Like, it's situational. It feels very appropriate, given the two's history and relationship. So I like that aspect. Of course, he tells him what he's asking him to do. Wong, before he takes off on his little journey, says, don't do it. Wong gives the warning.
Right.
But I think deep down Wong knows that he's not going to listen to what I say.
And I like how Steven talked about how he'd done things like this before. And Wong gives him the look like, hey, did you flashy thing me? Steven, did you flashy thing me?
Yeah. So, so then throughout the course of, the performance of the spell, the particulars become, okay, once I do this, everybody that knows will forget, including Aunt May, MJ, Ned, the whole night, like nobody. And that's when Peter's like, yeah, but I want, Aunt May, MJ, and Ned. And during the spell, he's interrupting, saying, but this person needs to know. So it's like, and when the spell goes awry, Doctor Strange blames. He's like, "This is your fault because you wouldn't shut up," which is classic
accurate
Peter Parker. It's like unintentionally you found a way to mango your situation even more. And so again, it just, this film in a good way is hammering home that everything you do, Peter Parker, has consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Even the simplest thing is opening up your mouth and saying, this person should know, or that person should know. So it's like really, like, it's like somebody like Kevin Feige, like you said, he listened to all the comments and saying, okay, people want consequences, we're gonna give them consequences. And the whole bit, the other bit of humor that I liked was when he's talking about not being able to get into school, and he's like, and Dr. Strange's like, well, did you just call and try talking to them? And he's like, oh, I could do that? He's like, I didn't know. And then that's what he proceeds to do in the middle of friggin' traffic. And he goes to, I guess it's the dean of admissions or whoever the hell she is. And at first she says no. And that's when we get the first big
She was an MIT administrator.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's the first big reveal of a past villain returning. Yeah. And it's...
Before we go on, I just want to get Nico's thoughts on the spell casting. What did you think about that? Because that was such an important scene.
Yeah, no, thank you. And so I love it, and I agree with Adam. It's where a lot of the humor actually really works. Like that classic, like, oh, you didn't call them, is so typical of high school and college students, like that they don't know they could be proactive and do that stuff. So that was just really funny and relatable. Yes. But going back to the spell, earlier I talked about how he's doing something because he's trying to make a choice. He's trying to. It's selfish in a way where it's not necessarily for him, it's for his friends. And another quintessential thing about Peter Parker is he's always thinking about other people. And when the spell goes awry, as silly as it might be, but it is accurate for how much Peter talks, it's once again showing you, and I think it's done in such a subtle way of, okay, he made this choice. He's trying to take the easy way out, but he needs it so specific, right? Once again, he wants it exactly the way he wants. So he's realizing, wait, well, I need Emma to know. Well, I need this. I need this. I need this. I need this. And I think the spell going awry is symbolic of, hey, I'm trying to help you, but how many other wild cards do you need here? It's too specific. It's too ideal. It's not fair. It's impossible. Yeah. And that is the biggest consequence right there. Which a line is brought back way later in the film by one of the villains we'll get to that I think sums up everything so perfect, and then it really sets that third act up wonderfully.
Yeah, it really underscored. I think it's a relatable theme in the sense that it's also telling the audience you can't have everything you want. Mm-hmm. We can try to have the best life that we want, but not everything we want is going to fall into place at all times, and you have to be ready to adapt and move forward with that. So I think that's a good lesson for the audience in this hyper fantastical situation that we're in. So we get the first encounter with Doc Ock, and let me just say, there was something special about seeing that character back again in terms of, because to me, Spider-Man 2 is just on another level in terms of quality. So to see him, it just brought me back to 2004 when I saw that movie. So they're having their fight, and the whole time, Doc Ock thinks he's fighting his version of Peter. And then there's that moment where like he's got Spider-Man hanging upside down, and like he retracts that mask from that armored suit, which I get it, but you're not gonna make me like it. But anyway, so he takes it and he's like, "You're not Peter Parker," and he's like, "Wait, yes, I am." Wait, and they're both confused at this point. But I like the fact that in that confusion, this was a key bit of the scene for me, was that Spider-Man was still thinking about, I can use this, Tony Stark inspired monstrosity to make my situation better. And he's using the nanotech to take control of Doc Ock's arms. which I think that was really, really impressive, because the reason why it stuck with me is because it shows Peter's intelligence even in what seems like an insurmountable situation, which is one of the key tenets of Spider-Man, in my opinion, that hasn't always been highlighted in this iteration of the franchise to this point. So I really dug that. And then, of course, we get the insane, out of nowhere, typical to the character, intro of the Green Goblin, which the minute you start hearing that laugh and you see that pumpkin bomb, it's like, all right. I mean, there's just something special about those, especially those two villains from that franchise, that you can't. I don't think you could put a quantity on how special a moment it is seeing those two. I mean, seeing the actual other Spider-Man is a thing in and of itself, but those villains, I think, made those respective movies. Like they were. I mean, if you don't have those characters, those actors, those performances, you know, they're so iconic with those roles. I think those two guys, like they're on the level of you know, when Jack Nicholson first played the Joker, or then Heath Ledger. They're in that category, I think, of recognizability with those characters. So it makes it special when you see them on. So even though the Goblin's first appearance was relatively brief, but it's like, oh, this is, you know, like
but still, for 1 second, you saw Spider-Man with his two arch enemies on, and I know, you know, Spider-Man fans sometimes they'll argue about whether it's Green Goblin or Doc Ock or what. Those are, you know, that's both, 1 and 1A. Yeah. I mean, whoever you want to put in front, I would say Green Goblin, but those two on screen with Spider-Man at the same time, that's got to be exciting.
So that was pretty special for me.
Seeing the both of them, and particularly we actually see Alfred Molina first and foremost. He is such a defining piece of Spider-Man 2, and why it's so great, because he does mirror Peter in a lot of ways. And to see him and have him be a little villainous for a few minutes, a good old fight, a good old Spidey Ock fight with the arms, and it was cool. I don't typically enjoy this Iron Spider suit in the MCU, but I did like
the use of it.
The bit where he sees his arms and we got competition. I mean, that was fun, and to watch the arms kind of counter each other.
Yeah.
It was fun, and I'll get more into as we move through the movie. I was really curious with the trailers how they were going to use Alfred Molina, because his Doc Ock does end in a very specific place in Spider-Man 2, which makes that movie and the character and the performance so much better and so much more special. So I'm like, okay, we're starting in this different place than what we saw. Let's see where this goes. And then even just the pumpkin bomb, the laugh, and the one shot of him in the glider was all I needed at that moment in time, because he gets through one. And then it's really nice tension building. John Watts does a lot of great stuff in this film. That's miles better than anything he did in his previous two. When that pumpkin bomb, it's like the tension starts building, and then they brilliantly cut away from it to be like, what are we seeing? And then it just keeps going from there. But to see those two, and Donnie, I completely agree. Those are the two. I mean, Spider-Man fans could disagree. I know some will want to be cute and put Venom in there or whatever, but it's those two. It's 1 and 1A, and to have a moment where the three, and then to hear Doc Ock get to acknowledge Norman, because we don't get to see that in those films, because spoiler alert, by Spider-Man 2, Norman Osborn's dead. There's very little talk about him outside of him and Harry. So to have him be Osborn and to have that recognizability already was just, because it's establishing, wait, he did know Norman, and we'll get into that later. It was just as not only a fan of the Raimi films, but a fan of Spider-Man, just to see them recognize. It's like, ooh, strap in.
So they take, I mean, so we leave off with Doc Ock is taken to the basement of the sanctum. Is it the basement, or I don't know what it is because they go down to do the spell, which I assume was.
I like how normal it looked outside of like the the holding cells. It just
like this
it was
normal.
It's like a basement. It's like a storage room.
It's like where Stephen Strange keeps his extension cords and things like that, and his extra paint.
And the really cool thing about one of the next scenes was that we get that scene in the alley when Norman is talking with the Goblin, much like he did in the original franchise when he's talking to himself and it's the mask, and just that scene of him talking to the mask and that voice, and it's like I know I never want to like fixate on one actor as one character for the the end of time until the end of time because it's impossible. Recastings are inevitable, but man, you see, like having Willem Dafoe back, and when he was giving that performance against the mask and talking to it, and sort of you hear that sinister iteration of his voice. I kept thinking to myself, if they do bring a Norman Osborn Green Goblin proper into this franchise and they recast, I feel so sorry for that poor whoever that actor is.
It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough
because he just brought him in. I'm like, damn, I want to see him again and keep playing this character because it was just so good. And I actually really felt this is jumping ahead to get we'll track back, but I kind of felt bad for Norman because he's plopped here in this universe. There's no Oscorp.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to his house. He can't get in because it's locked. He's not the owner of that place. No, there's no Harry. Harry doesn't exist. So, like, he's really, I think, and you get to see it more from his perspective. Like, he's the only one that's emotionally affected by it. Is that he's literally stranded and he's got no recognizable other than there's this Spider-Man that I'm attempting to kill. There's no recognizable, tangible, like connection to home for him. Like this is completely, and like again, he's the only one that they spend time on caring about these differences. Like he's the only one that mentions, "Hey, my son's not here. My house is not my house." So you really, and this is what Spider-Man, the franchise, has been known for. You really sympathize with him in those moments, and so. But then we get to the realization, like once these two come through, we get to the realization, Doctor Strange and it starts to say, look, there are going to be others from other universes, because basically how I understood it was when the spell was mangled, and he said everyone who knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, that brought forward, instead of working and making everyone forget, that brought forward everybody that knows who's from basically from every universe now is going to start coming through and either hey, it's nice to see you, or I'm going to kill this guy. It could be it's depending on who comes through. So that's the scenario we're presented with, and they're basically hunting. They're trying to preemptively find these potential problems, and I think we got Electro and Sandman, or not Sandman. Was it simultaneous?
Exactly.
Kind of simultaneously.
In short order, we saw Electro, and then a couple minutes later was Sandman. So,
and I liked the way they presented Electro, like he's creeping up behind. And you see the lightning, and like the way it was shot was very, very effective. And I gotta say, I didn't hate like Watchmen Electro. Like I didn't despise it. I'm thankful he had clothes. I'll say that. But so I didn't despise that. But man, is this 100 times better? Like
it's 100 times better.
There's no, and the way they did. In their own way, they did like they gave you a nod, a tease, a homage to the classic comic costume for those brief moments. Yeah, was really cool, and I liked that for this.
You could see the mask for just a second every time he used his powers.
Yeah, and For the fact that they acknowledged that original look was not well received.
Yeah, that's
Like
funny.
that they acknowledged it in movie was very clever. Like having him say, "Oh, this is an upgrade. I like it." Right?
And having the lizard also comment on how he was like, how like the last time I saw you, you had bad teeth and a comb over. Like it's just funny to make another Spider-Man character, and it's the lizard of all people insulting you on how you look.
Right.
It's just funny because he's a lizard.
And it's funny because with Sandman, that you talk about, the last time we saw him, he was pretty much, for the most part, the reformed version. Like he was like, when we saw him, he wasn't really trying to, like, his motivation was not to kill Spider-Man. His motivation was, I want to get home to my daughter. Like I don't care what's going on here.
Right.
Just get me home.
Yeah.
And we saw more. They gave us more of the performance of Thomas Hayden Church than I thought they were going to give us. I thought it was just going to be the CGI, Sandman, and we weren't going to get much, if anything, of a performance from Thomas Hayden. So, I mean, it wasn't X amount of, like, an excessive amount of Thomas, but it was just enough to, like, okay, they gave me enough of him. And look, say what you want about Spider-Man 3, but his performance was really good of that
He's
movie.
great in that
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
So
let me say, before we move on from talking about the Green Goblin and appearances here, first of all, I didn't hate the Green Goblin outfit in the original Spider-Man movie.
I'm with you. Thank you.
As much as I like the comic look, I thought it was a different take. It was fine. However, for this one, I'm so glad that they let Willem Dafoe not be in a mask for so much of this, because just like Weird Al said, he's scarier without it on. There's no mask they could have put on his face to make him any scarier than he was in this movie.
Oh yeah. He's the guy.
If you just go online and look at some of the stills from the movie,
it's nuts.
Yeah, he's
let them act. One other thing I wanted to touch on too, just talking about Electro and Sandman, because it was so cool, especially for my dad, who's a huge Electro fan. Loved just seeing his star, or the star face, which was so sick, or the lightning bolt, if you want to call it. But I love, once again, you really feel it here. We'll get more to Doc Ock later, but they keep where Flint Marko was at the end of Spider-Man 3, which is pretty reformed, redeemed. And he just wants to get home, which is very simple. Do I wish we got actual Thomas Hayden Church? I do, but I get it. I didn't hate that he was Sam the whole time. I didn't. I was like, it's okay, because he came in to do voice work. So that was fine, and he's Sandman. But what was so cool was to see him protect Spider-Man. Yeah. Know them, and then actually fight together. I'm like, when am I going to see, like, on screen? Like, there's, for me being I can only speak for myself, but loving Spider-Man so much, I have a short scene in a movie where Sandman and Spider-Man are fighting Electro together, and he goes around him, and it was so cool. And I like how it was the simpleness of having all the villains react to being in the world, and then Sandman actually being scared and reacting, and that's how he ends up, in Sanctum Sanctorum. So it all works. Some of it's simple, but it all just works naturally, like a comic book, a comic book would, right?
Yeah, it doesn't all have to be, religious allegory and Joseph Campbell, deeper meanings. Sometimes it can just be fun.
Yeah.
And simplistic.
By the way, I want to say I'm so glad that Jamie Foxx got another chance at this character.
Oh yeah.
I thought his performance was completely underrated. And people talk about how horrible The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was. I don't think that was the case. I just think that it had the bar set very high with a lot of previous films. And for them to bring this
with
back,
Spider-Man and the word 2 in front of it, I mean, don't call it that, because you're setting it up for, don't put the number in front, and don't put, call it something else. Call it Web of Spider-Man. I don't care what you call it. Just don't call it a number 2, because you're setting yourself up for failure, regardless of what you do.
I also really liked how Electro was like, are you guys just going to stand there and act like I'm, not naked? And Sandman was like, I am. And that made me think about the Love and Thunder trailer. I was like, I'm going to act like I didn't just see that.
No. So I really like that stuff. And then it was funny when, the next time we see Norman, he ends up at the the shelter that Aunt May's at, and he tells her his story, and she convinces Peter, you got to help him get home, right? And so that's what that puts the impetus on, like her advice puts the impetus on Peter of like the right thing to do is it was my mistake, well, mine and Doctor Strange, because let's be honest, he's the magic expert. Screw it, he deserves some of the culpability, damn it. So but it was his mistake that put them here. So Peter initially feels a responsibility to, because of that means encouraging, to help them get home. And when Norman shows up in the, let's call it the bunker, and he sees the other villains, and especially when him and Doc Ock see each other, and Doc Ock's like, Norman, he's like, you're supposed to be dead. He's like, what's going on here? And I did think the other thing I'll track back and acknowledge is that another part of, because I often criticize the excessive humor in MCU movies, but one thing where it worked was when you had Peter, Ned, and MJ like making fun of Otto Octavius as
you read my mind.
Because think about it, when you read, like, if you're picking up a comic for the first time, reading the name Otto Octavius and then his identity is Doc Ock. As much as you love Spider-Man, you can acknowledge that that's ridiculous. Like,
and they're teenagers. They're like 17, 18.
Yeah. You're going to make fun of that. Yeah.
Yeah, like things are funnier. A lot of stuff that is in like the early days of comics is a little funnier and cheesier now. So I like that. And I remember when the trailer came out, people are like, and I'm also with you, Adam, I'm very critical of MCU humor at times, but I remember when the trailer came out and some people were like, and if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. But some people were like, oh, that's a typical bad MCU joke. I'm like, no, it's not. It's hilarious. They're 18 in high school and he's standing there with metal octopus arms. And they go, what's your name? He goes, Dr. Otto Octavius. It's like, no, come on.
And you know what it is? It's the combination. It's the combination of the visual, like, him being so deadpan serious of my name's Otto Octavius. And they're like, really, Doc Ock? And so, but it's like that to me is good humor. Bad humor is everything they did with the Hulk for Ragnarok on. That's bad humor. Okay, let's quantify it. Good humor and bad humor.
Let me mention a little bit of unexpected symmetry here too. Do you remember in Spider-Man 2 when it was suggested to J. Jonah Jameson that they call Doc Ock Doctor Strange?
And he's like, no,
it's taken.
Taken. Oh, great.
And we actually get to see those two characters, all these years later.
And now Sam Raimi directed Multiverse of Madness. It's so full circle. Like, everything's full circle. It's great, and I'm glad Sam Raimi's back in the fold. I haven't seen Multiverse of Madness, but I'm glad that he's back in the fold. And I know it's the other side of the aisle, but I wouldn't mind Sam Raimi doing a Superman film. Just throwing that out there. Zaslav, you want Superman? I guarantee you Sam Raimi could do a bang-up job with Superman.
I agree.
Just throwing that out there. But anyway, I digress.
He could get the right tone.
Yeah.
But let's call attention to where we are in the movie now, because we're ready to touch on a very important point for the second half of the movie. So Osborn, Octavius, and Dylan realized that they were pulled from their universes just before their deaths.
Yeah.
And Strange is about to reverse the spell that's going to send them back.
Yeah.
And that's when Peter argues, wait a minute, we have to try to save them. And Doctor Strange is like, no, that's their fate. We can't do this. There's a greater good at play here. Yeah. We have to send them back.
Yeah. And then there's that whole fight between Doctor Strange and Spider-Man to try and prevent, Peter's trying to prevent him from sending them back. So he takes the what are we calling it? What was the name of the device? Was there a name to it?
I don't know.
It was a cube.
It was just a cube. I'm not sure if they gave it. It had an interesting name, but I don't remember it.
Wasn't there a Nintendo video game system that was a cube? What did they call the cube?
It was the GameCube. Yeah.
Yeah, it looked like a GameCube. Anyway,
GameCube.
I'm going to call it the GameCube. So they take the GameCube. There's this big scuffle over the GameCube, and I love like the trippy sort of Doctor Strange, different dimension visuals, and the whole train,
in the Mirrorverse,
yeah, and the train kind of sequence. I love that they put a train sequence in here, and don't tell me it wasn't intentional to have a nod to Spider-Man 2. And I'm gonna just say this all right now. Every superhero movie that has a train sequence is a damn fine superhero movie. See Spider-Man 2, Batman Begins, the Wolverine. Those are just 3 examples. So you want a good sequence in a superhero movie? Put a train in there. The next Superman movie, he's going to be fighting a train just because I said it now.
He's going to be saving a train.
John Peters is going to chime in and say, we need a giant train that's possessed by an alien.
That's hilarious.
I'm not going to give him any. Zaslav, don't take that idea. It wasn't a good one. It was a parody. But
I believe the proper name of the cube is the Machina de Cadavis.
Yeah, my name is better. The GameCube.
Look, we're just going to call it the cube. So.
Yeah, GameCube. Nintendo, don't sue us. So yeah, that sequence was insane.
Yeah.
And then
one thing I want to point out, well, 2 things I want to point out. Number one, I want to get Nico's take on the fact when Spider-Man had the cube and Doctor Strange had like separated his consciousness and he's trying to grab the cube and Peter is moving the cube before he can. Now, I took that as a manifestation of like his spider sense. Is that what you thought, or?
So actually, yeah. So I love that you bring this up because I do think in Spider Sense, I love how much and how well and how brilliantly they use the Spider Sense in here, because that thing waxed and waned in his portrayals in the MCU too, which I always found very confusing. I know they make a big deal out of it at the end of Far From Home, but just how it's used in here is so cool. But I saw this thing 7 times in theaters and multiple times at home. So So like I can look at frames and I'm not even watching. I'm looking. You can see very subtly when he's floating and the arm is moving. You can see like the comic book, the waves.
Oh, I'll have to go back and look.
It's very
for that. Okay,
subtle.
Yeah.
If you look really closely, you see little waves coming off his head, like it's the Spider Sense, and it's so cool. Also, another great line of humor, because we've seen Strange do that before, but when he pushes Peter out and he goes, "Oh my God, I'm dead!" Like it is funny, like because you're outside of yourself. You're like, "Oh my God, I'm dead."
Then he's like, "That was cool, but don't ever do that again.
Don't ever do that to me again." I love that.
Yeah. But yeah, and like I said, I love that they set that up. That is a time-honored kind of a narrative point with a lot of superhero comics is, what do we do with the bad guys? What is the greater good? And do we try to save one person maybe at the expense of possibly something else happening that's even worse? We get that in the Green Lantern comics a lot with the Green Lanterns against the Guardians, And Adam's like, I know he's going to mention Green Lantern somehow.
An hour and 12 minutes into the show. Well done, Friday.
It's on brand. I love it. It's on brand.
And if you want to hear more about Green Lantern, you can listen to the Emerald Echo podcast, available right here on YouTube, as also Podbean. So
shameless plug. Love it.
There we go.
But what I like about the whole, not just the fight, but the whole argument in general is, again, Peter taking ownership. He's saying, look, it might have not been this version of me that kills them, but in another universe, in their universe, a version of me takes their life. That's now my responsibility. Mm-hmm. So I don't want that to happen.
And it's a beautiful, once again, full circle thing. As we mentioned earlier, Aunt May becomes the driving force, right?
Yeah.
You did this. You got to put it back in.
Yeah.
Do not let him go. You're going to help him. And she goes, I know you're going to make the right decision. And in that moment, he's ready to let him go. He hears this, he sees them. And then just like Peter Parker, he's trying to save everyone now. Right. And what a brilliant thing to do in a comic book movie that I don't think we see too much is, okay, I have a chance to save all these villains. Yeah. I'm going to do it. And then he does it. And beautiful Peter Parker fashion.
And do you realize that he proved Captain America right?
Yeah.
Because how did Spider-Man beat Doctor Strange and leave him in the Mirrorverse? He beat him with math.
Math. Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. Do you know what's better than magic? Math.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And then
I'll
I
show
love
you.
another great scene with Ned too, and he goes, "I just fought Doctor Strange and I totally won." Like I like that.
He's still in shock that he's amongst these heroes. I love it.
Yeah.
But also, what I liked about what happens next is that there is reference and use of Stark tech that makes sense. That it's not just there because, okay, now we need our obligatory Stark mention in 3, 2. Like it actually makes sense. And it actually makes sense why they go to Happy's apartment, because who would have this some of this tech lying around would be Happy.
Right.
And first of all, I love Happy's reaction. Like, why are you taking these criminals to my house? Like,
Yeah, I love that.
Who signed up on this?
Guy? Is there a mud guy in my house?
Yeah, that was funny. But I like the fact that, I think it was the first one he helped was Doc Ock. And Doc Ock was very receptive, and like you could tell that there are certain people that you can tell deep down that have changed and are better people for it and for their interactions with their Spider-Man. One of them being Doc Ock. Like he wasn't like, he had that bit at the beginning, but it was like, okay, never mind. Like I look at what's possible in this universe. Screw that. Let me do bad crap to stay here. So he was very reformed to it was really Mysterio to a degree, not Mysterio, sorry, Electro, yeah, but more so Norman that really gets twisted. And
when they were in his apartment, I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, it's a good thing they're not all on the same page right now, because if they all decide to converge on him, he'd be
even Sandman was like
without a paddle.
I think even Sandman noticed the switch in Electro.
Goblin.
Yeah, no, and Goblin. He's like,
oh yeah,
like he could tell. I was like, you guys there's something. And again, I love the simplicity of, look, I don't want any part of what you guys are doing. Mm-hmm. I just want to go home to see my daughter, which I would have loved if there was an end sequence, seeing him on his universe reunited with his daughter. That would have been cool. But
I love the moment between them when they talk about their accidents.
Yeah.
And once again, they keep joking about the eels.
The eels, yeah.
And how crazy that was, but also he fell into the thing, and just the line is, gotta watch where you fall. The humor just all works in here. It's so great. And this was one of the moments during the movie. I was already very happy during the movie, obviously. Yeah. But this is one of the big moments for me when Ock is able to be helped and finally take the arm's influence away from him. And he is what he was at the end of Spider-Man 2. And I go, okay, they're going to keep him on this path. Yeah. This is really wonderful. And it also gives, I think what they do with the Goblin is great too, because they progress him to different levels of villain.
Yeah.
They progress Doc Ock to a different level of just character, right? Because now he has some really nice choices as the movie continues. So I was so thankful to see this. And I did think it was a cool, really, I'm going to use the word cute. I thought it was a nice moment between them where then he touches Tom's Spider-Man suit and the nanotech goes back and forms this like gold spider.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was really cool. It was cool how that whole scene played out.
And it's also I think like it's also an acknowledgement of, I mean, the other two guys do that too, but before the other two guys show up, it's almost like Alfred Molina is saying, okay, you're Spider-Man now. Like it's a passing of the torch kind of thing.
Yeah.
By him doing that. But then I also like that they take him off the board for a bit when the other two villains go rogue. Mm-hmm. They take him off the board, and so that when he comes back, there's a bigger moment at play. Yeah. When he comes, so they take him off.
Which
the board.
was an outstanding moment, by the way, when he showed back up. But
the big fight in that apartment with the villains there is sort of the big turn. The big the wrestling swerve there was kind of cool.
Speaking of, I mean, just when I thought there was no way that this movie could be any better, when I saw the fight between Peter and the Goblin, the first one, and he hits him with a power bomb, and then what looked like a sidewalk slam. But it didn't look cheesy. I mean, the way they were doing it, it looked awesome, and I was like, "This is amazing."
One heck of a fight sequence between them. Just the choreography and the intensity of it. That's classic Spidey Goblin.
And in the apartment too, which was cool. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was the space that they were in was like it's very because you see these like it's a very comic booky fight.
Yeah.
But in this very realistic space.
And it wasn't all pumpkin bombs and webs
No,
either. They were going at each other tooth and nail.
Yeah, it was
pure brute force. The hallway with the flashing lights as he's punching him, he starts laughing. I mean, classic Spidey vs. Goblin. But I want to talk about this because this is where I said, John Watts, you just jumped up 8 notches of a director, and I would even argue he took a little page out of Sam Raimi's book. The slow build point of view spider sense scene is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
When he notices something's wrong and he's walking with the camera, it's moving with him, and the tension is building and it keeps growing and growing. It's nerve-wracking, but what I like about it is it showed the spider sense in an interesting way where he knew something was wrong but couldn't figure out because they were all there. He couldn't figure out who it was, and then finally, so he looks at everyone, he closes his eyes, and then he realized it as Norman goes to reach his hand on something, and then we see the goblin snap back, and it's like, wow, what a great, just from a filmmaking standpoint, what a great scene of building tension, fear, and then bam, which then, as Donnie beautifully said, leads into this one heck of a fight. I mean, if you're going to rank the MCU hand-to-hand fights, I mean, that's right up there with some, just because of the intensity and the weight of what led to it.
Yeah. And then I guess should we go to the big moment with Aunt May? Should we,
I think we got to do it.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So of course the Goblin, has the temporarily the last laugh.
Right.
When those pumpkin bombs come back into play, and that apartment was just decimated. Happy was worried about sand. Sand is the least of your problems, buddy. I hope you're still getting some Stark Industries checks at some point. But yeah, so it's like the pumpkin bomb. Peter's not able to deflect it away, but the aftermath of the bomb, the effect of it is still a heavy brunt. And I love the effect of disorientation, like the scene, the sounds, the camera work. It really sells like you're in the apartment in the midst of all that. I like that. And when Peter sort of comes to, obviously the first thing he does is look for Aunt May to make sure she's okay. And it seems like she's okay. But then we realize that she's not, as she kind of faints, drops to the ground. And this is where we get, this scene is where we get a line that I didn't think we were going to hear in this franchise. And it was beautiful. Like, I know everybody here who's a Spider-Man fan is used to hearing, with great power comes great responsibility, from Uncle Ben. But in the context of this franchise, and the fact that Uncle Ben is essentially, his importance is reduced to a suitcase. Unless you're going to now throw 20 to 30 minutes of flashbacks and backstory into your stuff. It has to be, if you're going to use that line, it has to come from Aunt May. She's the only one that can deliver it with any sense of meaningful purpose. And she does. Like, her basically dying words to him are, despite everything that's happening, you have to fix this. You have to do great. You have, with great power comes great responsibility. You have the power to make this right. Do it. Of course, Peter is, when she takes her last breath, he's distraught. So he takes off. And in the midst of him trying to deal with the pain, deal with the emotion, and sort of kind of get his wits about him. He's also getting bombarded with J. Jonah Jameson on the big, jumbotron saying, "This is all your fault. Look at what he did. Look at what this vigilante did." So he's getting the brunt of what the two Peters before him got over the course of the first 45 minutes of their movie in the span of a couple of scenes. So it's all getting thrown at him. And I got to give credit to Tom Holland in these scenes because it's the most emotion I've seen from this guy.
Yeah.
In all his appearances as Spider-Man. And he delivered it well.
Yeah. Well, this is what I talked about earlier. I have to say this here. Of all the great actors and actresses that were in this movie, and I mean, it was loaded with it.
Yeah,
I mean, I think Marisa Tomei in this scene, that was the best acting job for a few minutes, because first we see her pull down what I think is like a piece of rebar.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that she's facing off with the Green Goblin, she's like, there's no way I'm going down without a fight.
Yeah.
Then we see her injured, and she gets up and tries to give Peter a pep talk. And even as she's collapsing, she's looking at him and saying, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And the way they did it, that piece of dialogue where she kept saying, "I just need to catch my breath." It reminded me of an old movie that I watched a long time ago called Colors, and it was about gangs in LA. Robert Duvall had that line near the end. He was a cop who got shot. He got shot near the xiphoid process, which is not a place you can get shot and live. And he kept saying that, "I just need to catch my breath." And every time he said it, it gave you a little bit more of a hint of this person's not going to make it, because
you ain't catching your breath, buddy.
Yeah. And when she said, like the third time she said it, I was like, she's not going to make it. And when she all of a sudden, you could almost see the life leave her. She did such a great job, Marisa Tomei, in that moment. It was amazing. She sold it. And then the emotion coming from Tom Holland and the emotion coming from Favreau, that sealed that, like, the importance of that moment. It was just amazing.
Yeah. I love that you commented on her acting, because this movie does her version of Aunt May and her as an actor so much justice. I've always been critical of the first two films. She feels like Hot May. It feels like the gimmick, right?
Right.
In this movie, they give her own agency. Not only is she the driving force for Peter, like Adam said, and to combine what you both said about her acting, but also what she says is, on paper, I actually knew before I saw this movie, I saw a spoiler on Twitter that she says the line. And I went into it going, okay, I'm open to it, but as I can be a Spider-Man purist at times, I'm like, oh, I don't think we need that, Every time I watch this whole scene, I cry because the emotion from everyone is so on point, and it is such justice to not only Tomei, but the character of Aunt May, which just rhymed, by the way. I heard it and I couldn't unhear it for a sec. That she gets to say the line, I think, is incredible, and she delivers it perfectly. And I was like, you know what? I love, in the context of this movie with what's happening, and in the context of the scene, he needed the line right now.
I'm glad we didn't get it earlier. That's when we needed it.
Exactly. This,
as much as we wanted it earlier.
In the MCU, right. As much as I wanted it, this is the perfect line, and it came from the perfect person in this universe. And I love how she's disoriented, and she's able to use, almost before her life leaves her dying, she's able to use the last life she has to put everything she has into telling him that. And that's like the last thing she's able to give before she dies. And the emotion's there. I also like this. The Spider-Man nerd in me love this. She also says the line accurately. I was never against the with great power comes great responsibility, but the line is actually at the end of Amazing Fantasy is, with great power there must also come great responsibility.
Yeah, I noticed that little change.
And she says it, and I'm like, that's actually the original line. And I'm not against ways of it being said, but to let her be able to say it the actual original penned way from Lee, I was like, that's also like a nerdy thing where I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's cool. That it
Yeah.
was There Must Also Come was in there, and
yeah.
man,
In that moment, I got a little misty-eyed, not just because of that. In that moment, I couldn't help but think about Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, and I wish they would have been around to like give their thoughts on the way this was handled.
Yeah.
I firmly agree with you. I wish they were able to see this.
Yeah, that would have been great. But it was a great moment. And then now comes, because Spider-Man or Peter kind of takes goes into a semi-exile to get away from things. Just we don't see him for a bit.
Right.
And back in the bunker, we've got, or no, sorry, at this
No,
point
it was actually
he's at his
Ned's
grandmother's house, right?
Yeah, Ned's grandmother's house. Yeah.
Yeah. So MJ and Ned are kind of wondering. We haven't heard from Peter in a while. Something's wrong, and Ned has the
Sling ring.
Yeah, the magical sling ring from Doctor Strange, and she's like, call him, see if you can, I'd love to see Peter. They're talking, and then Ned says that, and there's this little spark of, one of was it the wormhole, I guess you want to call it, and they notice that, and they're like, oh, do that again, and so he starts doing the whole thing, and it's like, we want, show me Peter Parker, and so the wormhole opens up fully. And in an alley, you see the shadow of Spider-Man. And instantly you're like, all right, wait a minute, that's too tall, too big to be Tom Holland.
Yeah.
So it's one of the two. And then as he gets closer, I'm like, okay, you just by the motions, you can tell, like the movements, you can tell that's Andrew Garfield.
Yeah.
And he comes through, and it's the suit. It's his suit, and
the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit, not the first one.
Yeah. Which that suit was amazing.
It's still the best one in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks that.
Yeah, I think it's the best one on screen. I think it's the best one on screen.
Yeah.
At least until maybe we got to the end of this, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So
yeah. And so he comes through and he takes off the mask. And what's cool about this is I watch these movies, like I told you. I have a ritual of, my mom took me to see the original Batman, so we kind of have this thing where we watch these movies together. And unlike me, who knew that was like these two guys were coming back, my mom had zero idea that these two guys were coming back.
Oh, that's amazing.
So she, as soon as she saw the suit, she's like, "That's the Spider-Man from the movie before." And then he takes off the mask, and she's like, "Yeah, I knew it wasn't the same Spider-Man." She's all proud of herself that she recognized just from the suit that it was a different. And the whole interaction of "You're not Peter," and he's like, "Yes, I am," and he's like, and then MJ was like, "Prove to me that you're."
It's so good.
Like
it's
the whole
so
back
funny.
and forth.
Yeah.
And she's like, she's throwing bread at him. He's like, "Please don't do this." She's like, "Don't you have the tingly thing?" He's like, "Yeah, but it doesn't work for bread."
It's
exactly.
And listen, shouts to Garfield for everyone effortlessly just stepping back into the role. Yeah. And man, that humor, and also let's give the man some credit. He is a 2-time Oscar nominated actor coming back, and man, he with Zendaya there, that humor just works. And I want to say, well, I'll wait until the end of the scene to comment on something, because there's something I've seen people say, and whether or not you believe it, that's fine, but I'm going to tell you that is not the case. But I'll get into that in a sec.
It was cool when she's like, "Prove it," and he's like, "This is not show and tell. What is this? What do I have to prove it?" Right. And then he's like, he basically crawls on the wall. The whole thing was cool. Yeah. And then with the grandmother, it's like,
Lola was like, "Can you get that spider web while you're up there?"
Yeah. And then she's like, he's like, "Do it." She's like, "Do it again." She tells Ned, "Do it." She's like, "Show me Peter Parker." And then the beauty of Tobey Maguire is like, he's not in the suit. He just walks through. He's like, "Hi,"
which is so perfect.
Yeah,
because he was always the more reserved, softer spoken as Peter, and just for him to come through and be like, "Hey, I just came up. It just closed."
Yeah, and he's like,
just so calm. He did his wave thing, his classic wave.
Yeah.
It's just some guy. That's not. And he's like, she's like, no offense. And then the whole interaction between Toby and Andrew was incredible.
In which Toby wins. I'm just saying. Because he knows he's got the few more years. He knows.
He does. But it's almost, it's like, you know what the beauty of that is that it's a temporary passing of the torch from the one to the other, because and it's something that I never expected to ever get, because who would have thought that Toby's Peter and Andrew Peter would ever get a chance to interact? Like, we'd never thought that. So you were never going to get that passing of the torch unless Toby had been a guest star in one of the amazing movies as somebody that wasn't Peter Parker. Like, you would have got one of those nods. Like, for example, when Christopher Reeve showed up on Smallville, and did that thing, that was as close of a passing of the torch from one Superman to the next that we're ever going to get, because until Warner Brothers proves me wrong, I never expect to see one Superman standing next to another one in the context of we're both Superman. Like, we're both playing Superman. Like,
and there's not even one standing right now. So unfortunately,
unfortunately,
there's not even one standing right now. I mean, on TV, yes, but in the films, no.
Yeah, in the film. So it's like, that was the closest thing to passing of the torch. You know, Chris Reeve to Tom Welling, whatever. But never did I think we were gonna, because the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 have come and gone, and they up until this point moved on from that franchise. So I never thought it was a possibility. So to get that temporarily, and then to get the double passing of the torch later on, was even worse. But just seeing those two again, it just echoes how, no matter what vintage of a Spider-Man fan you are, that is an impressive sequence either way, because either you grew up on the Raimi films, or your intro to Spider-Man was Andrew Garfield. So I think it's impactful either way.
And the scene itself plays out so perfectly. And I know I'm so biased to the movie, so I'm going to use that word perfect for everything. But it's, I really liked how it's in a kitchen, and there's the humor with the grandma, because I believe they knew, and maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but how I felt as an audience member, the weight of both of them coming back, you needed to put some space and some humor. So you needed to let Andrew do his thing. And not only did you let Toby do his thing, like between them and with them, you needed something to ground you. Because everyone who's watching that movie, whether or not you truly love those other two versions or you're just along for the ride, you're going to feel elated and this feeling that, oh my God, those two guys are here. Like, how am I even focusing? Like, the first time I saw this movie, it's so funny. I was more hyped than anyone. I don't remember how I felt during the first time seeing them, because I promise you I blacked it out, because I was one of those people who knew they were in it, obviously. How are they?
Yeah, that was the worst
but
thing.
I did something that Andrew said in interviews, which was so funny, is he goes, when you know something amazing is coming, part of you still goes, wait, what if it doesn't? And we got through that big emotional scene, and I went, wait, what if they're actually not in the movie? And that was the only thing I remember. As confident as I was that they're in the movie, I do remember when Andrew took his mask off. The only thing I remember from that first viewing, it wasn't the eruptions. It was me inside going, okay, oh my God, wait, they're actually in the movie. Someone who knew,
even though you
so confident went, oh my God.
Well, hey, there was some reason for doubt. Remember, there were all kinds of rumors that Tom Holland was in the Venom movies.
Yeah.
That he was going to show up there.
Because I remember I asked you, I think it was the night after the same night you saw him, like, I'm not going to see it for a while, so just tell me they're in it, right? And you're like, yeah, they're in it.
Yeah, they're in it.
Even when I was watching it, I was like, but are they? Because
there's part of you.
It's an hour and a half into this goddamn movie. Where are they?
that goes where are they? But I also want to say something with the scene is not only was the cheering every time I saw it so beautiful, I'm against the belief that it doesn't play well at home.
Oh no, it plays great.
Because not only does it play well,
There's
and like some people say, oh, you hear the moments where it's like, oh, they pause for cheering. No, there's dialogue that just no one ever heard. Because there was cheering when Andrew takes his mask off, he goes, okay, wait. And then Zendaya says something, and then there's dialogue. And then when Toby comes out, there's the line from Ned, oh, it's not Peter, it's just some random guy. And then Toby has his dialogue. So there's dialogue there that. So those scenes play perfectly fine without audience cheering. In fact, you hear the subtle pieces of the scores for both of them more.
Yeah,
I can attest to that because I saw it on Blu-ray. I waited because again, I'm older than you guys, so I wasn't willing to go to the theater. Especially we were in an area where there was a spike of COVID. So I waited. So and when I saw it the first time, in fact, if you want to go to my Twitter account, you can see me live tweet all the way through.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. I remember that night. That was a good time.
But it was funny because those moments do count. But like I said, my mom when she saw Peter, when she saw Toby, she's like, "That's the original." Yeah, that's the original.
Yeah.
And so she even though like, there wasn't people screaming.
Well, no, that's not the original. Danny Segrin's the original.
Well, for her, don't complicate things. She still gets Spider-Man and the Flash mixed up. We're making progress. Don't complicate things. So
I would have been happy to see that version. I don't care what anybody says. Just to hear one time, just to hear.
Where was Nicholas Hammond? Damn it! No, but it's like again at that moment, it's not like when they're both on screen together, you forget. Like it doesn't matter which one of them you preferred.
Yeah,
it's just like they're both here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
and I'm happy for it. And it's like I know not to go the other place, but it's almost like I wish that at some point down the line, Superman fans could get that, because I think that's the only way that they would. That's the only moment where they would unite. So, like we saw with Spider-Man fans, for brief moments there was no arguing. It was just, hey, both of our guys are back. We're all happy, and then months went by, and now look on Twitter. There's probably arguing again. But that was cool for that brief moment of unity within the Spider-Man fandom, because I mean, it's not just Superman or Star Wars fandom that's crazy.
No, it got really toxic for a while, because I remember when they rebooted the franchise, and I wanted to see the end of the.
I wanted to see Spider-Man 4 too.
Yeah, I did too, and I wanted to see the end of the Amazing Spider-Man franchise too.
This movie tells us, we don't always get what we want,
right?
And we got to roll with the punches.
But I didn't like how toxic I saw some of the fans get. Like it
got bad. It was bad.
It's bad.
Yeah.
And so then the beauty of the fallout of that scene is both of them are like to basically Ned and MJ, your Peter's in trouble. We want to help him. Where would he go? And they're both recounting their like quiet place.
Yeah.
Their New Yorks. I like that. And then the whole scene where they reveal themselves to Tom Holland's Peter.
Peter 1.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to start doing that, because this whole Peter thing is ridiculous.
I like how Garfield threw his arms up later on. Yeah. Peter 3, whatever.
Yeah. Which the numbering doesn't really make sense when you think of order of when they appeared in the franchise, but I digress. I get why he's 1, because it's his franchise, by way of Iron Man. Anyway, no, I'm kidding.
I would have called them Old Pete, Big Hair Pete, and Little Pete. So
yeah,
I love that. Big hair.
I gotta be honest with you. As emotional as the Aunt May scene was, them talking about their experiences.
Oh man, it's beautiful.
To Tom Holland was even more emotional. Like when they're talking about their Uncle Ben's, and Andrew starts talking about Gwen. I'm like, so please kill Gwen. Like, I know they had to kill Gwen, but I was getting emotional for, like, as he's talking about, I couldn't save my Gwen, I was having flashbacks to the scene where Gwen snaps her neck, hits her head against the ground, and so that was very emotional. And it's like, when they say, they all say that with great power line, and they're like, my uncle, Uncle Ben told me that, and he's like, for me, it was that me, and so they both tell him the anger, the vengeance you're feeling is not going to help you. We have to honor your Aunt May by helping, like killing.
And they planted the seeds there for a huge, a crescendo at the end.
Yeah. Oh, and then so you're getting all this emotion, but then this is where, again, this movie was where humor was done well. They kind of settle you back down from the kind of sadness with the lab scene where all the Peters are. But before we get to the lab scene, talk about your feelings when the three Peters kind of converge for the first time and we're going through their traumatic experiences. Nikko, tell us for you.
I mean, it's the greatest thing in the it's the greatest thing in the world. I love, once again, like that scene, like you talk about emotional with Aunt May's death scene. I mean, this one rivals that. It was so effortless from the two of them too, to just kind of share their stories, and we also get an idea of where they are very subtly, which is great, and in such a careful manner without giving too much. But Toby Spider-Man he's been there and he's through it. Andrew is still kind of in it.
He's the closest one to happy.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Andrew's still
way to describe it, yeah.
And then Tom is just entering this period, right? Yeah. So they're all trying to guide him through where they are, and they all talk about their loss. And it's at this point, Tom is experiencing his greatest loss. They're talking about their two greatest losses. And, to have them talk about the line together and have them all acknowledge it is just incredible. That scene, I would love to know, because I do believe they actually did that one together. Yeah. I would love to know, like, what Zendaya and Jacob Baton were thinking, just standing there watching it, because all they do is stand there and watch. Yeah. And that's not a bad thing. It's just
they probably forgot they were in the movie.
Yeah, right. Like, and I also like how Tom's a little resistant to them and tries to grab the cube, and she pulls it away, like, listen to them, like, listen to them, because I think she already got what Tom wasn't able to process yet, is that these are you, and they know this. I don't know how, but they know what's happening right now. Yeah. And I really think you need to listen to them without saying it. It's such a subtle move by her, and whether that was her choice, whether that was direction from John Rotz, it doesn't matter. It was perfectly executed on all fronts. Just such a subtle moment of MJ being like, and that's classic MJ. Yeah. Trying to guide him to, right, listen, and then wow, does that scene, and then the lab scene. Oh, the lab scene to the scene where they're getting ready is it's a fever dream of just. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's there's no way it exists. I still don't believe the lab scene and the setup to the fight scene. I don't believe those exist, because it is so fun. It's so enjoyable, and just in a movie with so much emotion, they do it. Adam, I love that you said they have to bring you down emotionally, and so they let you have some fun, which I thought was brilliant. But seeing through this movie gives you every single thing you want. It's ridiculous. Now you see them do science together, shows, right?
And it was unbelievable. And what I loved about it wasn't just, okay, you saw them, now we're taking them away. Like, they were there, and it wasn't just, again, there's fan service where you see it for 2 seconds and then it's gone, or like an Easter egg here and there. This was in a movie that had so much. Doctor Strange, the multiverse, all that jazz. It was really about Peter and multiple Peters. But the beauty of it is, even though those guys are there, they're there in service of the MCU Peter.
Yeah. Yes,
it's not like
perfect
support. Get lost, kid. We're in charge now. Like,
it's all done in service of Tom, and also the way they are, they never
To use a wrestling term, they put him
overshadow
over.
him, and they're never camp.
I'm sorry, Nico.
That's hilarious. No,
Go
perfect,
ahead. Dude.
perfect timing. It's just they were just not even cameos, right? They literally become supporting cast members of a film, but it's all done in service of Holland, and it's like I said, it shouldn't work, but it does.
Yeah,
It shouldn't work.
Really
But
shouldn't.
And I loved when they talked about the differences with Peter having the organic web shooters.
So great.
And he's like, you can't shoot webs.
Yeah.
Little things like that we never thought we would see as Spider-Man fans.
And like even now they're like when they're talking in the lab and Toby's like, yeah, I'm with MJ now. It's kind of complicated, but we're working through it.
Yeah.
And then Andrew's like, I haven't really thought about moving on because he's still heartbroken over Gwen. So I guess in wherever he is, that performance by Shailene Woodley as
hasn't happened.
Hasn't happened. That poor girl's waiting to play Mary Jane. It's ridiculous. But and then like just again, because they're not going to give you and this is what happened to me and this is what happened to me, but they give you a little bit of touchstone that you're like, okay, in my head canon, I can let it play out like this. If the MCU ever decides to show me that in a movie or a Disney Plus series, I'd love it. Or a Sony.
But they gave you some closure.
They gave you some, right?
We didn't think we were going to get anything like that.
And then I love the scene where Ned is like, he's on the computer analyzing where the villains are, or whatever, and he's like, Peter, and they're all like, Parker, and he's like, all three of us,
all of us again.
Peter won, and that's when they come up with they start coming up with the idea of we need to figure out how to do this because it's confusing.
Yeah.
And then when they're on the Statue of Liberty, like they're preparing their new that whole thing where they played up the back issue for Toby.
It's everything.
And then he's like, "Oh, you want me to fix that for you?" And he's on the fly chiropractor. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I got that too from all the swinging and this." And then they're like, the whole thing about they're recounting like who they fought, like who, because these are the beauty of these conversations that they're having, and I think why it works so well is because they're conversations that fans have had.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
We've compared the different webbings. Mm-hmm. We've compared the different villains from the franchises. We've compared all that, and so having the three guys do that in character makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then being, like it's Toby and Andrew, or Toby and Tom talking about how they fought aliens, like,
right.
Yeah.
And Andrew's like, I want to fight an alien. Like, I didn't get to fight an alien. Or the mention of this happens a little slightly later on in the scene. The mention about how
Tom was in the Avengers.
Tom was in the Avengers. He's like, what's that? A band or something?
Yeah, exactly. I love when Toby was like, the Avengers. What's that?
And then when he tries to explain, and then Toby goes, "How is this helping?"
Like, we don't have time for this.
But also, I love that Toby also gets, because not only, and I haven't heard someone say that yet, and it's brilliant that it's conversations fans have through them. But also, I love how, Andrew, while a lot of people love him, his films are underappreciated. So Toby gets to give him the validation that you are amazing.
I love that. Yeah.
You are amazing. Can you just say it? And Andrew's like, you could tell he likes the compliments, but he's playing it off because he's such a talented actor.
Yeah.
He's like, no. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but like, thank you. All right. Yeah. It's like, he's like playing it off almost like, I like what you're saying, but now I'm also like embarrassed. But, yeah, I love the alien made out of black goo, because I think it's going to come later. And I think there would be a brilliant idea for a cameo in the future. But I'm totally fine with, just like you guys said, like, we got that closure. And if we never see anything again, I'm so happy with it.
Yeah. No, so, I mean, those scenes were just great. And then when you finally see, like, there's just, again, even as this movie's happening, there's the scenes in the third act where they're officially in like team up mode and working in unison, each handling a villain. And there's the shot in the trailer that was altered.
Yeah.
Like when you finally see the three Spider-Mans
Oh man.
swinging towards their adversaries in battle, that's like a holy crap moment that I didn't like. Who would have ever, aside from fan fiction, who thinks of that stuff?
Right.
Fan fiction.
Yeah,
That's all.
exactly.
Like fan fiction is the only place you would have ever found that.
Like you'd never dream of that. Like it's and we got. I think again, maybe it's because of 20 years with the franchise. To me, that moment was more impactful than the pan around of all 5 or 6 Avengers.
Okay.
I for me being a diehard Spidey fan, I agree with you. I think it's someone.
I mean,
who
that
did not-
moment was great, but
Oh, both fantastic. I even say for me as a Spider-Man fan, like you said, outside of fan fiction, to see like Andrew say, "I love you guys," which is so funny, and then to have them swing and they all do their like yell like "woo" and whatever,
Yeah.
and then the score, and then when they land, it's like that to me. Who has loved? What's funny is the MCU is the version of Spider-Man I liked the least, and this movie made me love him.
yeah.
And so I'm loving him in this movie.
And that was the job. Yeah.
That was the job. But when all three of them swing and land in comic book movies, that's my number one scene that rivals not only the original 6 pan around, that is, to me, it was bigger than Avengers Assemble. Like that, it just was, because Spider-Man is my number one of all time.
Yeah.
So to see the three of them swing and land, that's the biggest thing I'll probably ever see as
Like
a fan.
he's the benchmark of like when you think Marvel, right? In general, you think of Spider-Man. So to see that,
He is still the flagship character. He always will be.
Yeah.
Not Iron Man.
yeah, it's always going to be fun. That's why they made such a big deal about it when they got him back.
Yeah.
It's like so that moment for me was exceptional. And then I like the moments about at the end of the day, they all stay true to of let's help these guys. Like,
Bingo.
and there was the moment between before we get to the Doc Ock and Toby moment, there was the moment between I want to say, I know it's out of order, but screw it.
Mhm.
I'm going to do it that way anyway, because I think the other moment's more impactful. But there was a cool nod when Electro is kind of he's stopped fighting, he's been given the cure, everything's good, and he's talking with Andrew, and Andrew pulls off the mask because if the Spider-Man's still pulling off his mask, and he's kind of disappointed. He's like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "I was kind of hoping you were black." And sorry to disappoint, but I think that line is important because it opens the door now for, and I've often wondered, it's only a matter of time before they bring Miles in.
Yeah.
This is their. I know he was mentioned.
They'd be crazy not to. That character is so popular.
He was mentioned in Homecoming, but now you've taken it one step further. They've got to, in some way, shape, or form, do it. Whether it's MCU or whether you really want to go crazy and explore the multiverse, if he shows up in a different universe, one of the other two guys' universe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how you do it, but you've taken it to the short of saying Miles Morales, right? You've now taken 2 steps. The first was Homecoming. The next is this. With Into the Spider-Verse, that franchise being as popular as it is, and the video games and everything else, there's no way that Sony doesn't have their cake and eat it too.
They have to.
Both. So there's
before
that.
we move on to the big, like the big, the climax here, I do want to talk about my favorite moment, and it was a movie full of favorite moments for me, like you guys are talking about.
How can you choose?
When MJ fell,
Yes, that's
and
what
Tom couldn't be the one to save her, when Andrew Spider-Man saved her.
I loved it. It needed to happen.
That was
It needed to happen that way.
That was the perfect way to like give closure to that version of the character. And the way that Andrew Garfield sold it when he realized that he had saved her, that was just a beautiful moment.
Yeah. Oh, and like you could tell.
Can't even say it any better than that.
Like I know they're acting, right? But the visual emotions on his face, they just felt real. And like I said, I was thinking of that moment before when he was talking about it. When he was, when he was telling Peter, I lost Gwen, my MJ, right? And so it was that was the, like, had they had Andrew in this movie and not done that, I think it would have been a wasted opportunity.
I would agree.
Because now, whatever the character's doing, he can now move on and he can open himself up to maybe finding MJ, his MJ. Because he's now, it's not going to bring Gwen back, but he kind of absolves himself of, I did everything I could. And now I was able to save somebody in that predicament. I was able to spare my other self from going through that pain. And now I can move forward. So it just needed to happen. I know some people wanted it to be Tom that did it, but I think...
No, I thought that was perfect.
It was perfect.
I thought it was perfect. So that was the moment I wanted to... That's why I did it out of order. It was out of order, but
right.
I think it was the more important of the two moments. Yeah. But I did think that the moment with Electro was nice because it further acknowledges that, hey, eventually, Sony's basically saying, we're going to get to Miles. We're kind of just, it's like they're prepping that. I hate to have to say this, but fans are fans. And despite the fact that Miles is popular in his own right, the idiots are going to come out of the woodwork when they eventually cast Miles. You're going to get to, why is Spider-Man black? Blah, blah,
yeah.
Blah, blah. Shut up.
It's inevitable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Read a comic book, damn it.
That's right.
The video games you played, did you ignore Miles? Like, hello?
And there's an Academy Award-winning film starring Miles Morales.
Yeah, but these people are idiots, and they're still going to be idiots. And
still don't know.
But it's like they're massaging the other. Okay, get ready because one's going to come and he's going to be black. It's okay, deal with it. It's like they're massaging their back. It's okay, baby, get ready for it. It's going to happen.
Right.
And there's also, so I love how Donnie brought up the Andrew saving Zendaya.
I know where you're going.
You're right. It was so important. So I know we're out of order, but now I have to talk about the other one because as big as that moment is, there's also an incredibly big moment for Toby that just parallels what they were talking about on the roof. Is Toby didn't physically kill the person who killed Uncle Ben, but he led to him falling and dying, and it didn't do anything. So I remember watching the movie going, all right, well, what's Toby going to do? And stopping Tom from killing Norman.
That was amazing.
So both those scenes, so I have Toby's and Andrew's, what they do, both on the same level, just for me, because I'm like, wow, they both, that one is so powerful in so many ways. He's not letting Tom cross over. He actually has a chance to save Norman. Now he's doing a lot of things at once, and that to me is the other passing of the torch of like, I'm not going to let you do this.
Oh yeah,
I'll even take a blade for you in the back. Which, man, thank God they didn't kill him. I was gonna.
I really thought he was dead.
I was going to go nuts if they did it.
That would have been. Don't you dare!
Don't you
dare!
Yeah.
But man, I love the scene and how there's no dialogue. Toby's just looking at him.
Just the look,
He's just holding. He's like, I'm
exactly.
not gonna let go. So,
He didn't need dialogue there. He's such a great actor. He conveyed so many emotions right there.
And then,
but I did want to talk about, before we go, I want to talk about one of my favorite lines, because when Tom looked at the Goblin and said, "I want to kill you myself," that's when you knew something different was about to happen, because it reminded me of 25 plus years ago when the Guardians released Sinestro from the Central Power Battery during Emerald Twilight. Adam's laughing at me, but one of my favorite
another drink because you mentioned Green Lantern. Thank God.
One of my favorite lines was that Sinestro looked at Hal Jordan and was like, you're not going to kill me. You're one of the good guys. And Hal looked at him and goes, not right now. And that reminded me of that when he's like, I want to kill you myself. It was no longer about being the hero. Somebody had to intervene because in that moment, Tom was lost, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it also
beautifully said.
Kind of parallels the way it reverses in a way. I don't know what happens when they get back in their own world, but he got impaled by his glider 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He now stopped that. Now, I don't know what happens on the other side of that portal. Who knows? But we can assume if the whole thing was fixing these people, we can assume when they go back, something has changed. And it's not the same universe of films that we once watched. I would assume. That's just my headcanon assumption. Otherwise, if they just go back and die, what was the point? So there's that. But the other moment that I really liked, before we get to how it all ends, was the scene where Doc Ock finally shows up and he intervened, he helps, but he's like the third man, but in a good way. Another wrestling reference, but actually it's the fourth because there's three Spider-Man. The fourth, anyway, it's all screwed up.
I would have laughed if he said, "You Spider-Man fans can stick it."
Yeah, but when he sees Toby's Peter, and they have that exchange about it's been a long time. It's like, how are you doing? And Toby's like, I'm just trying to be better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do better.
It's just a perfect line. It goes back to 2.
It was so good. Yeah.
I love they got a moment, and it was just, once again, it was so endearing to see the heroes get to cure the villains, but also for Andrew and Jamie Foxx, and then Toby and Alfred to
they all had the moment.
It's just perfect. He even gets to finish, the power of the sun in the palm of his hand. He finally is holding it for a second. Yeah. And I love that they keep Doc Ock where he was at the end of Spider-Man 2. He is redeemed. Was he flawed? Yes, but he's saved. Spider-Man has saved him. And I also want to touch on just real quick, is I know, and I do think rightfully so, some people were a little bummed that Toby and Dafoe didn't really interact. But if you let him also interact with Dafoe, then it's becoming more of a Toby swan song. And you're really overshadowing Tom. What this movie did well is showing you that the Goblin has fully taken over Norman to a higher level. He is an ultra big bad of Spider-Man, right? Yeah. And Tom needed a villain, and one of his villains wasn't in this movie. So you had to make one of the legacy ones his big bad. He hurts Holland more than he ever hurts Toby. He physically kills Tom Holland's Aunt May.
Yeah.
So at that point, I think it's just understood, maybe in the fan base and the characters, that Toby's like, yeah, that's my Green Goblin, but he's bad and he's worse for this kid right now. So they get to look at each other at the end when Toby's laying there stabbed, and Willem Dafoe comes to, and he looks at Toby and goes, "What have I done?" So that's enough for me. And there was more between Molina and Toby in that second movie than really Peter stuff, in my opinion, in terms of a relationship. So
I would agree.
He was the bad Green Goblin, and the moments of Toby stopping Holland and looking at him, like, those are the nods to the two of them. But Holland needed a big bad, so you had to make it. Once again, if it was Toby saying goodbye to all these, then it becomes his ending instead of Holland. Right. So I think they balanced that right. And they made the right choices at the end there.
Yeah. By the way, I really loved the hug moment when Tom hugged Andrew and Toby and was like, "Thank you so much." I believe that was a meta moment. It was more than just Spider-Man saying thank you. It was Tom saying thank you for paving the way for me to be this character in the MCU, because it was you guys that really helped this character's popularity and got me to where I am right now.
That was the passing of the torch moment between the two to him.
And Spider-Man fans all hugging each other. And
for about 5 seconds.
I know fan bases will always be toxic, but I promise you, this movie eliminated a lot of the toxicity. It really did succeed in uniting the Spider-Man fan base. And I love what you just said, Donnie. Such a meta moment, not only for them. I think it was all the fans of the three of them. Like, even me, who didn't love Holland, and now I love him in the role because they gave him a perfect story.
Yeah.
it was even me as a fan of Toby and Andrew, and maybe people who are a fan of one but not the other, blah, blah, blah. All of us being like, we got 3. They're all close to perfect now. Wow. Let's all hug, right? It's that's what it was. It means so much. Why does everything work in this movie? It shouldn't. I'm telling you.
It should have been a disaster.
Not work.
Yeah.
None of it should work.
It should have been a
somehow
disaster.
all works, in my humble opinion.
And then, of course, the ultimate solution is we can't keep it this way. They've got to go back, and we've got to make it so that nobody remembers who you are, including, none of this, but this person and that person and that. No,
right,
everybody. And so that's when we get Doctor Strange doing his mumbo jumbo hand thing, and so Peter, our Peter, MCU Peter 1, even though he's Peter 3, but I digress, has to say goodbye, and he basically tells both MJ and Ned what he's going to do. He basically says, "Don't worry, I'll find you, and we'll reconnect," and this and that. So Strange wipes the slate clean, and then Peter does what he had intended to do, which was find MJ, who's still working as the waitress there, and which is a kind of a nod to MJ, Kirsten Dunst MJ.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't remember, but while he's doing his order, he's like getting the courage to introduce himself and I guess explain things. But he sees that she's gotten into college, and Ned's there, and they're both happy. So he makes the choice of not telling them.
Again, very heroic.
Himself.
Beautiful sacrifice. One of the best sacrifices in comic book movies, but quintessential Peter Parker.
Yeah. And even
you know what that reminded me of, though? I remember in the end of One More Day.
Yeah.
After
everybody loved that story.
After Mephisto had removed their marriage from the timeline, if I remember correctly, and it's been a long time since I read this, but when Peter is like all of a sudden 15 again, when Mary Jane walks out of the room, she kind of turns around and looks at Peter like she almost remembers who he was. Am I right about that, Nico?
100%.
She almost remembered. Yeah,
you're right, and I'm glad they also keep it in the movie too. She kind of looks like there's just something about it that even though I'm not necessarily a fan of that story,
well,
well, that remains to be seen. But you are right on the money there. There's a subtle nod of like, wait. So I like how that's mirrored here very well.
I remember people were ready to come after Joe Quesada back in the day.
and then even at the gravestone of Aunt May, he sees Happy there, and Happy doesn't know who he was. Doesn't remember. Happy remembers Aunt May, but damn Peter Parker. You're damned if you can remember Peter Parker. And then we get some cool scenes in, Peter's renting a new apartment.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see, what's his name there? The rent.
Mr. Dickovich.
Yeah. Oh, I would have loved to see that guy.
I hadn't even thought about that, but that's one thing we could have used.
I just wanted to come in and say rent.
That's once.
And so he's in the apartment, and we see that he's got the police radio there. It's very much a point for point setup that Toby had. I think the apartment was just inversed.
I think you're right.
If my mind, it's the same setup, but it's inversed. Like it's the other way around. And you see materials from red and blue in his new costume. And then you hear a call over. It was
as gorgeous as anything I'd ever seen on a screen when they had that costume on.
And as he's getting, you see the new suit. Now it's not. The scene is dark and it's wintry, so it's kind of like you see it, but it's still
intentionally a little vague, but
obscurity to it there. But first of all, let me say, seeing Spider-Man swing and twirl and do all that stuff in the wintertime. I need more superhero wintertime Christmas movies. That needs to be a thing.
Yeah.
Because I think it looks awesome. Yeah. But also the little bits that I could see of the suit that I could make out and kind of notice. was that it seems like a mix of all three that we've seen, like
It does.
all three characters. Like there's a little bit of Toby, there's a little bit of Andrew,
Yeah.
and there's a little bit of.
Did he have the fat tick spider on the back? I couldn't really tell.
So the way I interpreted it was, tell me if I'm correct, Nico. The back of it looked more like Andrew's.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a bigger spider on the back,
Okay.
not the tick
Front,
form.
yeah.
It was more of the tall
Yeah.
Okay.
one.
Okay.
I believe so.
And then the front kind of looked more like Toby's. Like the front spider was a little bit more Toby-esque.
Yeah, kind of like that one. Yeah, it was a little more like that. I think.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Well, Hot Toys will give us a figure in a couple of years, and we'll know all the details.
well,
Exactly.
the next movie he's gonna have that suit, so we'll see it. I hope. Please, no more armor crap. Like I've had enough.
No
I
more
don't
armor.
want to see him in armor. I'm done with it. No.
I thought, and I don't dislike that. I don't hate it, but when Doc Ock gave him the nanotech back, I wish he would have made it red and gold at that point. I'm like, Tony Stark's not here anymore. Nobody's going to get him confused. Just,
So before we do the rating, before we rate this, which is it's going to be the most obvious rating in the history of rating.
Most obvious one.
There's something else we got to talk about.
Yes.
Well, I know you want to talk about the post credit, Donnie, because it's got your buddy in there. But before we get to the post credit, just a question I have for the both of you. Now that we've seen Norman Osborn, Green Goblin, and he played such a pivotal role for this Spider-Man, do we need to see him recast and played by a new actor in this iteration of the franchise? Thoughts?
No, I think you could go with Harry. Either go with Harry or go with a Hobgoblin or somebody like that. I don't think they need to go back to Norman again.
I say, yeah, don't do Norman again because, like you said, like Willem Dafoe is iconic, and they already used him. In this movie they use him. I don't know how you can use him in a bigger fashion either. Yeah. I think you either go right to Harry or you make. I mean, because you have him now. I know what Sony's doing? I have no clue.
Do they know what they're doing?
Just let it be Michael Keaton still. I mean, just let it be this Vulture can grow on and become the big bad. Now, here's my other crazy thing. I think you can get away with using Doc Ock again. And this might be a hot take for me, but you do what they did in Into the Spider-Verse where you maybe gender swap it.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Sure.
I think that could be interesting for Doc Ock.
I like that idea.
I think the Green Goblin has been used so much now.
Yeah,
just let it a little bit of a different spin on Doc Ock, I think would be interesting. Or just let it be Keaton and some of these other villains.
And also put somebody that's on my list as the gender bent.
Sure. Amen.
That's not cutting it down very much. That list is big.
wasn't Anne Hathaway supposed to be a Spider-Man villain?
I thought she was supposed to be Adrian Toomes' daughter.
Right. So just make her.
I think she was supposed to be Vulture's daughter in.
Make her the gender bent Ock. That'll be nice coming around.
I can see that.
I'm just throwing that out there, Marvel and Sony. Take it or leave it, but if you take it,
and give me a scene with Tarantula and Swarm. By the way, I don't care. 5 minutes.
Yeah. Do something wild.
I like Nico's idea of the gender bent Doc Ock, and I'm sure that the fan base will just warm to that idea.
Oh, they'll absolutely love it.
So easily. I mean, they're going to have a conga line just celebration.
They'll be celebrating festivals.
And so that's what I want to ask you. And now, Donnie, because I know you're dying to get to the post credits.
In the post credits, we see at a bar, and actually, I'm going to take issue with a couple little things here, but we see my man Tom Hardy and my favorite Marvel character, and that is we hear Venom, we don't see the symbiote, but we see a piece of it. We do see that. My issue is that the symbiote, unless it really wanted to let itself get drunk, it shouldn't be able to be drunk. Sure. Like it can expel all kinds of toxins. But nonetheless, I like the fact that once again, Tom Hardy I love the fact that he always looks like he hasn't showered for about a week.
Oh,
when
it's so
he plays
funny.
Eddie Brock. Yeah, he plays Eddie
Kind of
Brock
look like
the
Alan
way.
Moore, but anyway.
Yeah, the way Eddie Brock needs to be played, and he's kind of like trying to assimilate into this universe. He doesn't stay long, but we do see a piece of the symbiote is left behind, and that opens up so many doors. A new Venom, anti-Venom, Agent Venom. And here's the thing: I know that everybody wants Tom Hardy to go on playing Venom forever. He might not want that, but maybe Marvel has a different plan in the future. So that leaves them with many options because we now have the symbiote in this universe.
And as someone who, if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I think that the Spider-Man in the black suit is one of the greatest things ever. It's my favorite comic book costume ever. I'm so glad Donnie brought this up. There's so many possibilities now. Do something with it. I don't care what you do with it. But with the way shows are giving comic accurate suits now, and with the modern CGI, man, when he gets that thing, I know it's going to look like that, and I can't wait.
Yeah.
And
I don't look very accurate for sure.
And at the end of Venom, Let There Be Carnage in that post-credit scene, so spoilers if you haven't seen that, Venom's talking to Eddie about how it
14 times. 14 times.
Really?
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Dude, I have so much fun with that movie.
I love that. I think it's fun. Like people
I have fun with that movie.
just have fun with these things, man.
I have fun with that movie. But the Venom tells Eddie that the symbiote has a hive mind that can remember, and it remembers things across universes and multiverses to a way that Eddie won't comprehend it. So I think you can do a cool story, maybe Hardy and Holland a multiverse thing, or when the symbiote gets on Holland, it just starts remembering that. I mean, it could be really cool. But I think I said earlier there would be a great idea for a cameo. Is if you were ever going to use Toby again, I would love if it's just literally a cameo. Holland's got to fight Venom, and he quickly travels to Toby's world, and Toby's just like doing something at home, and Tom's like, okay, do you remember when you fought that alien in the goo? All right, I got one now. How'd you beat him? And Toby's like, well, it didn't like sound. Maybe you can do that. And he's like, thanks. All right, I'll see you later. And then just
that'd be cool.
Okay.
That would be
I'm on board with
cameo.
that.
That would be
I thought you were going to say bring back Topher, and I was going to be like, no.
I don't think Topher wants that, let alone the fan base.
A small cameo, just him going to Toby, and you could poke fun. It's like, did yours like come off you weird? Yeah, I was really inconvenient.
Them having coffee would be just a quick
just like a quick conversation. He's like, all right, well, I'm gonna go try to fight this thing now. And
that would actually be a really cute cameo.
And Toby's like, yeah, man, I'm sorry, I helped you once, and it really changed my world. So I don't know if I want to do that again.
But honestly, just when you think about this movie, I know maybe Andrew and Toby don't want to play this guy forever, but it opens the door for, like, in certain comics, Spider-Man has a daughter, right? I mean, who's to say you couldn't revisit Toby's world, but instead, like, show his daughter? There's so many opportunities with the multiverse, and Sony and Marvel having to sort of work together, but sometimes it's contentious. Like, you have options with the multiverse. Now that you've done this, the options are endless, and so it really you could I mean, Spider-Gwen. I'm still, and I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. How you did not make a Spider-Gwen movie with
Emma Stone?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Emma Stone. How you not make that movie?
Oh, you mean they're on the list? That's what the pen is. Oh, I just figured that out.
Whatever.
I just figured that out. I've seen you do that 100 times. I'm like,
I see
how
that
do you
pen
not
all
make
the
that
time.
movie? How do you not make that movie? Like, I don't understand. How do you not make that movie?
I'm still in the camp that, even though I really actually don't think it's true at all, that Sydney Sweeney in the Madam Web movie is going to be a form of Spider-Gwen, but I'll take it. I don't know if it actually looks like that, but I'm trying to
I'll take it.
Manifest that.
I'll take that. Yeah, I'll take it.
I still want to see the Spider-Man from Dirch Devidam with the Spider Gang come into this.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. And only of like the 50 people that are going to listen to this, about 5 of them are going to get that reference.
Yeah. There are so many options on the table for Sony. In terms of where they can go with the Spider-Man IP, it's never been richer. Like, they're in a scenario where they can have their cake and eat it. Like really, they can have their cake and eat it too if they want. So
let me say before we get to the rating.
Yeah.
Let me say one thing that's going to be a little controversial, and it'll start a whole bunch of people talking. This, to me, this proved, I think, to the general audience something that I've always said, and I love all kinds of comics, Marvel, DC, independent. Yeah. I've always said that I think Spider-Man has the greatest rogues gallery because they are the deepest, they are the most diverse, and this proves just how rich each one of those characters were. More so than even Batman, and I love Batman's rogues gallery, but you saw just how different they are in terms of power and motivation and personality, and they made it all work together. And the general public got to see what we as Spider-Man comic book readers have known for decades.
I think that's fair. I mean, I go back and forth with the both, but I actually really like that point in the way you just described it, because I think you're right, and I think this movie did so many things for the audience, and I do think, that's one of them.
And the best part is, like, if you're talking about Spider-Man villainy and Batman villainy, in terms of movies, we've only really scratched the surface for both franchises.
Mm-hmm. There's lots that could be used that we haven't seen before.
If you think about who we've seen Doc Ock twice now, Green Goblin 3 times.
Yeah.
And then on the Batman side, Joker, endless times. Penguin twice, the Riddler twice. So really, they're both the most like the breadth of amazing villainy that both have is immense, and we've seen a fraction of them on screen. So there's so much to play with in both there. But I mean, no, I wouldn't argue. I mean, the case can be made. I mean, you can have I think a claim either way wouldn't be wrong. You can't really argue with either.
Yeah, it's hard to argue.
So, I mean, I don't think that's really controversial.
I've had some Batman fans jump all over.
It's controversial. It's controversial.
Well, I mean,
or it can be. I should say it can.
Logic would dictate that if you think about it rationally, and me being, Batman, for like I've always said, DC is the woman. If DC was a woman, DC would be the woman I'd bring home to my mother and marry. And Marvel is the fun one night stand that it's a fun time, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. But
we don't ever have to worry about Kappa here because this is definitely not for kids now.
No, but listen, I kept it clean considering I'm talking about one night stands and things of that nature. I didn't go into specifics.
Yeah,
but
that's definitely PG-13 now.
He rode that PG-13 line.
Exactly.
Line.
No, but talking about
like the Batman film did it really. That PG-13.
Like the pen and the eye trick. I know what I'm doing. But a rational fan could sit there and say, even if I like one more than the other, I can see the argument why someone would think X has better villains or Y has better villains. So it just, I mean, if you're going to get upset and pissy about it, then go outside, touch wood, see a man or woman and have fun. Do something else. If that's what
PG-13, I'll let you guys finish up while I like sit here and sing something in the way.
No, but if you're going to spend endless hours on social media arguing about are Batman villains better or Spider-Man villains better? Really, like, do you see the world we live in?
Fantastic, yeah.
Like, there's so much other BS to worry about than that.
Yeah.
So just have fun with it. This movie proved that just, take all your troubles, put them away for 2.5 hours, and just have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Feel things that aren't anger towards your fellow man over stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
So, with all that said, and before I get into myself in more hot water on this channel.
Very eventful show.
That's
what I talked about today. I love it. This is one of the best conversations I've ever had on a podcast. Thank you, guys.
Let's go ahead and rate this thing. So, Nikko, you're the guest of honor, so we'll start with you. Letter grade.
10. Oh, letter grade. Did you see how quick I was at the 10? That's a content moment. Right after he says a letter grade, 10. Oh, sorry. For me, it's an A+. It's an A+ because It's an A+ because as a Spider-Man fan, I think it delivers everything you could have wanted and more. The movie should not work, but it does from a filmmaking standpoint. It just does. It pays off in every way you want it to. And I really think, for me, it solved every issue I had with Holland's version of the character. And going into the movie, I loved 2 of the live-action Spider-Man. I walked out of this loving now all 3 versions, and I do think this might be hyperbole, but I don't care. In all Spider-Man media and mediums, I think this movie is one of the best Peter Parker stories that's out there. I really do. Because of what he has to do and the sacrifices he has to make, and he gets to literally confront himself 2 other ways. So it's an A+ for me. It was my favorite movie of last year and one of my favorite movies of all time.
Donnie?
Plain and simple.
Yeah. Oh, likewise, I'm an A+. I just don't know what else we could have had in this movie. This rocketed to number 2 as far as comic book movies overall for me. For me, it now goes Avengers, Spider-Man No Way Home, Black Panther, The Dark Knight, and Venom, Let There Be Carnage.
All right. I respect that list.
I love how you have Avengers at number 1, and we have to talk about that because Avengers number 1 is still the best Avengers film, and I will fight.
I'm not going to argue with that either.
That's right. He's right. He's right.
I agree. That was another global phenomenon, folks.
It was.
But anyway,
just named except for maybe Let There Be Carnage for global phenomenon.
But yeah, no.
I gotta tell you a funny story when we get off the air, Nico.
Yes, so that was an A+, Donnie, for you?
Yeah. A+, absolutely.
All right, and I'm going to make it a hat trick, to quote a hockey term, and say
yes,
A+. So to me, this is quintessential Spider-Man. This movie has everything a Spider-Man fan would want. I don't know how you could be upset at this movie for shortchanging you in any way. I really don't. I don't get it. If that's how you're feeling, it has the epic must-see event type film aspect to it, like that end game and all that stuff had, you know, and it just, to me, what's beautiful about this is that I think, well, I know that in terms of the comic book movie genre, Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man brought me back. Like I had seen X-Men and I enjoyed it, but I didn't watch that. The first X-Men I didn't watch in a theater. I watched it on home video. Blade, I watched it at home video. So it wasn't like I went to the theater for those. Spider-Man, the first one, brought me back to the theater for comic book movies after Batman and Robin drove me away. And it really took the genre, like it resurrected it. I mean, X-Men and Blade laid the groundwork, but the first Spider-Man took it to get to a place where we could be at the level where we are now. And I think this movie brought me back to the theater as well, but also got the genre to take another step in terms of with the multiverse. And it laid the groundwork for that. So this movie does everything that it needs to and more. And I definitely think it's a top 5 for sure in terms of the genre. In terms of where it ranks in the Spider-Man films, probably number 2 after Spider-Man 2, because that thing is just so freaking good. But yeah, and that's no shame to be number 2 to Spider-Man 2. Most films are going to be second fiddle to Spider-Man 2. So for me, it's an A+ as well. I loved it, and it's one of those movies where I think the rewatchability is incredibly high, and that to me, to stay in my top 5 or 10, rewatchability has to be there. If I
Good
have
point. Yeah.
If I have to force myself to watch something, and again, I don't want to anger people, but screw it, I'm used to it. There's a movie that is a so-called global phenomenon that I watched twice when it was available on streaming, that I have yet to go back to, just because for me the rewatchability isn't there. I can watch. Look, I'll watch that Flash Speed Force scene on YouTube 1,000 times, but the desire to watch that movie more than the twice I watched it isn't there. So
Your loss.
You know.
Your loss.
But I mean, look, I respect.
Your loss.
Hey, listen, I respect the
Watch
people
it
that have
part.
watched.
Watch it in the
Okay,
chapters.
Wait a
but-
minute. Which movie have you watched more, Nico? Come on. Now be honest.
No Way Home.
Okay, that's all I'm saying.
It's a better movie. Yeah.
But rewatchability is a big component about why a film reaches a level for me.
Oh,
Like
sure.
Joker's a great movie. I watched it once and will never watch it again.
Fair.
So that's just to show you how high this one ranked. Avengers I could watch till the cows come home. Like I never get bored of it. Look, I know the guy that directed it is a
Yeah. Well.
J.A. etc.
Yeah.
Come up with all the names I'm not allowed to say on this podcast,
Mhm.
and he deserves probably every one of them.
Yeah.
Same with the guy who directed X-Men: Days of Future Past.
Mhm.
But I could still rewatch those movies
Yeah.
ad nauseum. So, and this one's on that level. So that's why it's so good. And I can't wait to rewatch it again, even though I did that last night.
Mhm.
So there it is. And look, it's been December. We're still talking about this movie. And you can continue to talk with the three of us about this movie on social media. So, Nico, where do they find you?
Yeah. Thank you. Once again,
By
guys,
the way.
such an honor. Such an honor. So, thank you guys so much. Flip. You can follow me everywhere at Nikko Caruso. That's NIKKO CARUSO. That's Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and TikTok. I do some film reviews on TikTok. You could follow my Spider-Man show I do with my dad and our good friend, Mr. Peter Vera at so it's the Italian Spider-Man Coalition. It's at Italians for the number 4 Spidey on Twitter. And we literally talk about Spider-Man, but also some Italian stuff as well, food. And then another show I do with my dad and my good pal Zeddy as well, The Vigilante 1939 is how we got into this space. So we talk about everything on that show, DC, Star Wars, Marvel, and all the above. So come talk to me. If you tweet at me or DM me, I promise I will respond. And if you talk about Spider-Man or Spider-Man in the black suit, that is also the key to my heart. So
ladies,
yeah.
if you want to get it, there's your...
It's right there. I just teed it up. So
if a woman, wait a minute,
follow this account.
If a woman cosplays as the black suit Spider-Man, like, are you borderline instant proposing to that woman?
Instant proposal.
Okay,
Instant
right.
proposal, honeymoon,
okay.
and 10-year plan.
All right, okay. Good to know. Ladies, there you go. I just give you a hint. Go ahead. Go nuts.
I'm right.
Donnie, what about you? Where can they find you?
You can find me on the Emerald Echo podcast right here on YouTube. Also follow my YouTube channel. That's the Emerald Enthusiast for lots of product reviews that center around comic books. You can also find me on Twitter and TikTok as the Emerald Enthusiast.
And ladies, he's happily married, so don't try anything funny. If you want to find me, it's on Twitter at Adam_LeafsFan. We have a Facebook group, which is somewhere in the link below. Click that. I'll add you and we can take the conversation. Ladies, as you can tell, the multiverse list is immense. I really don't have right now, the list is on hold. It's closed. I'm sorting things out. If somebody gets there, Nico knows. If somebody gets removed for getting out of line, I'll open it up again. But for now, leave me alone. I can't take it anymore. No, but by all means, talk with us there. We'll be happy to talk Spider-Man or any other geek-related thing that we cover in this space with you, and we'll happily do so. But until next time, remember that Spider-Man No Way Home is a global phenomenon forever, from the first Peter Parker to the last. So long, everybody.
So long, everyone.